Carrier candidates, you want to give me co-host powers?
Morning, Madam Chair.
Morning, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Let me turn on my camera. There we go.
All right.
Good morning.
Morning, Sarah.
All right, so far. Sarah, Jean.
Did I beat Flynn again, Kenzie?
You did, although Andrea beat you, so you're not
Andrea, my hat's off to you.
first. So it looks to me like, so on the list I've got, I'm still missing Eddie Pinkerton and Greg McCarthy, maybe?
Yeah, so I have Greg, Janeth, Sarah, Mike Lynch, Eddie, and Michael Hamill. And I know Greg is here and Eddie is here. They're both in City Hall.
Yeah, Greg just came through,
Okay.
but I think we still don't have Eddie on the line. I think he's the only one from the list.
I'll give him a minute and then I'll pop on down there. He's only like 2 offices away from me.
Well, he might be. I'm going to let this person in. Sometimes some of the City Hall computers come in as a 6-digit number.
Okay.
And I see we've got one of those right now. So we're going to see if it's him. Hopefully not a Zoom bomber.
Good morning, President O'Malley.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you.
So let's see.
Sorry, everyone, I'm here.
Is that you?
I hear
Eddie?
it.
Yes, yep.
Okay, I'm just going to relabel you with your name so that you're not 127846. Right. And then I'm just
And
gonna,
I see Michael Hamill. I see Janeth. I think we got everybody.
great, excellent. And I'm gonna have the folks who are here to speak to the PG Access Fund, we'll just have you through at the appropriate time. So just
Okay.
know that I know they're here. Just helps us keep track of. Well, maybe we'll just bring them over now. It'll just make my life easier later. All right. So it sounds like everything's ready on your end, Chief?
Yep, everything's ready on our end.
Okay, excellent. Well, there's no time like the present. And we're live on YouTube. Carrier, Candace, are we ready to go?
We're ready to go, Madam Chair.
Fantastic. Thanks, Candace. All right. Well, then I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the chair of the Council's Ways and Means Committee. This hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. As part of the council's budget review process, which has encompassed about 35 working sessions and hearings focused on all aspects of the city's proposed FY22 budget. This is the third to last of the initial round. So we've got we'll be talking to the Department of Innovation and Technology today. this evening at 6 p.m. If you'd like to come and testify on any aspect of the budget, we'd encourage you to come and share your thoughts with us. And then tomorrow at 10 a.m. we have the Boston Planning and Development Authority agency. And then we'll be continuing budget review in June, but the departmental hearing period will be finished. So if you do want to testify, you can go to boston.gov/budget-testify to sign up. You can come join us in the Zoom today to speak on DoIT. You could sign up for this evening to speak on any topic. You can also there submit a video for us to play with your budget testimony. You can send us an email with your written testimony at ccc.wm@boston.gov. And you can always informally tweet us your questions and comments with #BossBudget, BOS budget. So we hope that we will hear from you. And you can find that remaining schedule of hearings and any future hearings at www.boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on docket 0588 to 0590, orders for the FY21 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. Docket 0591 to 0592, orders for capital fund transfer appropriation. Docket 0593 to 0596, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. And so that whole set of dockets really encompasses the full proposed FY22 budget that came from the mayor's office in mid-April that we're considering. And then today we will also be considering docket 0545, which is an order approving an appropriation from the income of the PEG Access Fund. And our focus areas today will be, as I said before, the Department of Innovation and Technology, colloquially known as DoIT, and the PEG Access Fund. We're very pleased today to be joined by Chief David Elgis, the Chief Information Officer for the City of Boston, and a substantial, by Greg McCarthy, our Chief Information Security Officer. I guess now I'm reading. Well, I'm actually going to allow the chief to introduce his whole team because we have an impressive complement of folks from DoIT with us today. And I know we've also got representatives from BNN Media and from Tech Goes Home here to talk about the benefits of the PEG Access Fund. But before we go to the administration team, I just want to thank my colleagues for joining. I'm joined here by Councilor Andrea Campbell, District 4, Councilor Matt O'Malley, District 6, and also our President Pro Tem. Councilor Liz Braden, District 9, and Councilor Michelle Wu at large. So thank you to all of them and other councilors who may join as we continue. So I think, David, that I will pass it over to you now to kick us off.
Sounds good.
And then, once we hear from the team, obviously, then we'll move to councilor questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, President O'Malley, and good morning to all the members of the City Council joining us on this morning's call. I'm here today as the Chief Information Officer for the City of Boston to testify on Mayor Janey's proposed FY22 budget for the Department of Innovation and Technology, also known as DoIT. I'd like to introduce members of my team that are joining me here this morning. There is Greg McCarthy, the Chief Information Security Officer, Jeneth Falvey, the Chief Digital Officer, Sarah Fegalora, the Chief of Staff, Mike Lynch, the Director of Broadband and Cable, Eddie Pinkerton, the Director of Operations, and Michael Hamill, the Chief of Enterprise Applications. Sarah, Mike, Greg, Janeth, Michael, and Eddie, as well as many other members of the DoIT leadership team, oversee the work that we do every day and have put a great deal of effort into planning the projects that are included in this year's budget recommendation. I'd first like to share some information about the mission of DoIT, my department, and some of our recent accomplishments, as well as some of the upcoming priorities reflected in our FY22 proposal budget. The Department of Innovation and Technology, also known as DoIT, is a trusted steward of innovation and technology, a catalyst for innovation. The past 15 plus months have been a very defining moment for DoIT, answering that long-standing question, how does technology respond during a crisis? And I can say with total conviction that my team stepped up to the challenge and continues to do so today as the city starts opening up post-COVID. We focus on enabling city operations by consistently delivering reliable and secure services and innovation solutions as we strive for best-in-class customer service with experience and we have with our end users. Our continued goal is to help the city deliver excellent service to our residents and businesses by equipping our departments with technology and support that they need. Additionally, we strive to create a learning culture for our employees that encourages smart risk-taking, creativity, integrity, curiosity, rapid evaluation, deployment, and encourage adaptability in the face of an ever-changing technology landscape. At no other time has our mission been tested more so than the current COVID-19 pandemic that all of our fellow Bostonians are facing today as we eagerly look to getting back to the new normal in whatever shape that may take on. DoIT has 6 core function areas. Core infrastructure. The infrastructure team manages the city's networks, servers, data centers, phones, desktop computers, and are at the core backbone of the city's technology efforts as we aim to deliver infrastructure that is secure, modern, and resilient. Enterprise applications. The applications team supports the core application systems that the city uses to run its business, from but not limited to our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, and tax systems, manages the city's finances, as well as our back office systems that sit behind and support many of our customer transactions. The goal of the applications team is to equip the city and employees with great technology to assist them in delivering excellent service to our residents every day. The digital engagement and service delivery. The digital team runs our city websites, social media programs, and many of our mobile applications, including our CRM, customer relationship management system that support our 311 service. The digital team aims to make information services available via digital services and deliver friendly, convenient, and accessible experience. Data and analytics. The data team helps the city use one of its most valuable assets, its data, to improve the quality of life of everyday Bostonians, to improve the overall effectiveness of government operations. They build dashboards, create analytical tools, and provide operational support to departments using data to improve outcomes for our residents. Broadband, cable, and digital equity. The broadband team works towards the goal of a city where every resident and business has the access and affordable bandwidth internet and the skills they need to succeed in the digital age. The broadband team centers around encouraging competition in the broadband marketplace and supporting programs that assist our unconnected residents. And lastly, security. There is a tremendous amount of public safety and operational, reputational, and political risk associated with IT security and privacy breaches. While there's no solution that can be guaranteed 100%, security has been, we've adopted an industry best practice and a multi-layered approach to managing cybersecurity risk, with it includes people, process, and technology, as well as industry-leading technology and working with great solutions partners. We will continue to improve our security posture and address a consistently evolving threat landscape as we continue to increase our investments in cybersecurity, network security, cyber resiliency, infrastructure security, and operational and business continuity in the upcoming years. We strive to ensure that the interactions that the residents have with the City of Boston are safe and secure. We accomplish it by utilizing a full spectrum layered approach to cybersecurity from perimeter, network, data, application, and device security. However, this is not enough. We also have a process of which hardening our overall security framework with a focus on improving the city's overall security culture as a vital component to the overall risk management. Given our broad portfolio of responsibilities, I won't go into detail on all the projects that we have done, but over the past year, but I will highlight a few of the accomplishments that we've accomplished over the last fiscal year. Supporting digital equity in the City of Boston. COVID-19 changed digital access from nice to have to a must have. Since the pandemic began, we delivered 5,000 hotspots to families without connectivity or stable home environment, and have deployed 2,500 tablets to vulnerable populations, including those in recovery, those experiencing homelessness, isolated seniors, and immigrant families. We are currently distributing $250,000 in mini grants to directly support the needs around technology, equipment, access, and training. Information and supporting the city's COVID-19 response. At a time when so many things were rapidly changing, We were able to support the city's leadership with data dashboards that they needed to deliver critical and crucial real-time insights to make data-informed decisions. As processes were continually evolving and being implemented to support the city's response to the pandemic, our team was able to rapidly deploy forms, workflows needed to make those processes successful. Keeping residents safe and informed. Our outward-facing content efforts over the last year ensured residents had the latest COVID-19 updates in near real time. The team supported a distribution of content across a multitude of engagement platforms, including boston.gov, social media channels, newsletters, and digital screens across the city and in local communities. We ensure COVID-19 messages were released in multiple languages to make sure that we are reaching as many Bostonians as possible. Technology platforms and infrastructure enhancements. In the past year, we have made significant infrastructure and platform enhancements to deliver continued services to the city's departments and improve the security and resiliency of our tools. This work has been made easier for remote employees to access the tools they need to do their work, and it has supported the return of staff and students to Boston Public Schools. Our enhancements to enterprise applications have improved our ability to support the licensing and permitting needs of the community as well. Securing our environment. As we respond to changes in the workforce, keeping our environment secure was always at the forefront of every decision. Over the last year, we have worked diligently to increase our security posture in the city by updating the way employees access critical core programs, increasing protection measures around data transfers, implementing data loss prevention measures, and adding increased protection measures to the city's email and sharing applications. Supporting our fellow departments and employees. Every team member has stepped up in the last year to support our colleagues through remote work troubleshooting and return to work troubleshooting. And with finding the best technical solutions to deliver the best in class services to our constituents. Essential members of our team were on site at city locations throughout the pandemic, supporting on-site technology and ensuring that employees could effectively work from home. As we look towards FY22 with a focus on recovery, reopening, and renewal, we're excited by what we can accomplish with this budget with the support of the City Council. And a few highlights include digital equity initiatives and broadband expansion. A major investment dedicated to digital equity initiatives and expansion of wicket-free Wi-Fi, ongoing support for 7,500 tablets and hotspots distributed to students, seniors, and immigrant populations in response to COVID-19, as well as hiring a digital equity advocate to support our strategic plan and providing a direct line of connection to the community. Improving access to digital services. Moving the Boston Public Health Commission, BDHC's website to boston.gov to support and enhance the user experience and have a single voice of truth for vital critical city information, enhancements to the Boston 311 program, including updates to current back-end and front-end applications to support a better user experience and better supporting accessibility as well as redundancy and reliability. Implementing enhancements to enterprise applications. Major enhancements to our human capital management and financials applications to secure a streamlined processes and implement a new legislative management system to support operational needs and improve transparency. Upgrades to our geographic information systems infrastructure to support the maintenance and deployment of geospatial tools, investments in e-signature and grant management platforms. Enhancements to the cybersecurity, enhancing the cybersecurity of our environment. Advanced tools to manage and monitor systems and applications and ensuring data remains secure. An expansion of our incident response infrastructure and the implementation of tools to protect our systems from malicious activity. infrastructure investments to remain connected and secure, continued expansion of Boston's fiber network, BowNet, to increase connectivity between municipal buildings, continue to build out of our telephony VoIP, voice over IP, for departments and city locations, leveraging the power of data and analytics and data science, developing a new data sources, pipelines, web services to support departments, projects related to dashboards, reports, maps, analysis, forms, and workflows, maintenance, and new development-related data and documentation on Analyze Boston, alongside with continued focus on the latest data security standards. These and many other projects are outlined in the proposed FY22 budget materials. The Department of Innovation and Technology is here to help government, businesses, and our residents succeed. Our mission is to support the delivery of exceptional city services throughout the use of technology. We are not here to simply provide IT services, but to be a true partner with other city departments, creating great outcomes for the resident of Boston. I want to close by saying thank you to a few key people, starting off with Mayor Janey for her vision and strong leadership, along with her unwavering support as we enhance online service delivery as we come out of COVID-19 and transform the way the city of Boston delivers services to our residents as we continue to come out of our COVID-19 pandemic. I'd also like to thank Justin Sterrett, our CFO, and the entire budget team for working tirelessly in a very difficult time to make a very solid budget. I'm confident that given the technology investments that we have made in recent years and that we are proposing for FY22, that we are on a very solid footing as we focus on the important groundwork to support citywide strategic initiatives. I also want to thank the dedicated employees that make up DoIT, who do this hard work day in and day out. I'm truly very proud of what we have accomplished together over the past year, especially over the past year to support the city of Boston and our continued operations in the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak. Our efforts are not always visible, and they are certainly not always glamorous. But as we learned over the past year across the country from governors and mayor alike, that IT operational continuity and the city's online presence and digital outreach are the backbone to serving our residents in a crisis and are paramount in paving the road to reopening the city of Boston. Our work often takes tremendous amount of collaboration, patience, thoughtfulness, and dedication. However, the importance of this work cannot be understated in its critical operational continuity for the city of Boston. Much of what DoIT employees do every day is the core backbone of online communications, public data, software applications, connectivity, digital equity in the city of Boston. And lastly, a sincere thank you to the City Council for continued support, continue to supporting our mission and the services that we deliver and the critical work that we do every single day. Thank you, and I, along with my team, are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you so much, Chief. Very much appreciate those thorough remarks. I also want to note that we've been joined by my colleagues, Councilor Julia Mejia and Councilor Ed Flynn as well. I think we'll probably just jump straight into questions. The order will be, I'll defer mine to the end, Campbell, O'Malley, Braden, Wu, Mejia, Flynn. And we'll do a first round of questions, and then I'll probably take the comments on the PEG Access Fund before the second round. So that's my plan. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Councilor Bach, and David, thank you and your entire team for your hard work. Just extending gratitude, not only for me, but for my team as well. We're constantly in contact with DoIT with respect to the police department or anything else for that matter. So really grateful to you and your team for the work, particularly through the pandemic. Renewed focus on the digital divide, of course, which is a good thing, right? Coming out of this pandemic, we have an opportunity to really close that. So I would love to hear a little bit more on just that, right? As we know that residents are going to be more dependent on technology for employment opportunities, telehealth is going to expand. Where are you seeing the possibilities, not only for the city, but also external to the city, how other players and stakeholders might also play a role in closing the digital divide. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. My second question is, I'm just going to ask all my questions at once so you can answer those before we see the gavel. Clearly, with the pandemic, there were probably some projects or things that were put aside that the team could not work on because of the pandemic. So curious what some of those projects are. What were some of those initiatives, probably department focused in terms of efficiency, that had to be put to the side that you hope to bring back now that we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel with respect to the pandemic? And then my third question, and I think there's still time for this, is, you know, we had a hearing once with DoIT, police department, data, analyzing data. Obviously, a whole bunch of departments are collecting information that they think is useful. On a recent budget hearing, the youth engagement department was talking about youth engagement and employment, how they have a whole bunch of data, but actually are hiring a human capital or position, a research position, to analyze that data so it can be useful in closing gaps and putting forth more thoughtful policy going forward. So I'm curious, where do you see your department being able to provide even greater supports and assistance to departments? I know you already are, but where are there opportunities and what are the barriers to those greater supports? So many of these departments that have a whole bunch of information don't know necessarily what to do with it. It's not, like you said, just technical assistance. It's deeper than that. It really is policy development and solutions to the very problems facing our residents. So curious what that looks like from your vantage point and where the barriers are in terms of being able to support departments throughout the city. I think that's enough for now. Thank you. And thank you to your team as well.
Thank you. That's a great start, and all very great questions and very important questions. And, you know, and as you said that the digital divide, I mean, even though the term the digital divide was a term that was coined in kind of the late 90s, I think 1998, if I'm not mistaken. And that was really the transition between moving people off of kind of phone lines, you know, hardline phone lines, to more internet access because our world was changing. And very much so that it became, you know, it went from a nice to have to a must have. And COVID-19 really brought this to the forefront, you know, and it was definitely, you know, dead center, you know, on my team, as we were, both myself and Mike Lynch, as we were scrambling to get hotspots for students that we just sent home. And supporting the, you know, the school with, you know, their Chromebook deployment. And but also, you know, as we had also kind of learned from, you know, the pandemic, which you know, obviously brought its own set of challenges, we also have a lot of other populations that are feeling the brunt of that pandemic, such as senior citizens that are feeling isolated and not being able to reach out to grandchildren or family or friends. And it's a bit of a perfect storm for them because they're not technology natives, they're technology immigrants. And that's even a little bit iffy there. And they are, a lot of our senior citizens and a lot of elderly community really lack a lot of the comfort level or skill to really kind of navigate the technology and the internet. But, you know, we also have, you know, the immigrant community that is also feeling isolated. And I can go on and on and on. So it was very much an eye-opening experience. You know, as I said in my, you know, opening statement, that this is something that I am in ongoing conversations from CIOs from Los Angeles to Atlanta to DC to Philadelphia. We're all trying to solve this problem, and we all are having different approaches on how to tackle this. There is and I think that you touched on it, but if you haven't, I'll kind of touch on it anyway. I think that we do have a real opportunity in front of us, from stimulus money, from CARES Act funding, from ARPA funding, from, you know, and the list goes on and on and on. And this is probably federal funding that we will not see again in my lifetime. This is one time influx of money that could really help us turn the tide in answering that long-standing call from the late 90s is what are you going to do about the digital divide? How are you going to connect your residents in underserved areas, elderly populations, immigrant families that are, and households that are unstable? And this is really an opportunity that we can focus. And one of the things that Mike Lynch and I have been talking about, as well as Justin Sterrett and myself, is really some moonshot ideas and how we can really focus on bridging that divide. And we've always approached it around competition. We've had some of our partners that have really stepped up to the plate and worked in my hats off to Mike Lynch, who was really kind of pushing this with a lot of the providers, making sure that we had an opportunity to connect some of those residents. But in COVID-19, there was a bit of different challenges because with a lot of the providers that were looking to do a connection in your house, turn the clock back a couple of months, I wasn't allowing anyone in my house, so therein lies the challenge. And, and then you're giving a hotspot to someone who may not know how to set it up and how to work it. So it was a very challenging time. But now as we come out of COVID-19, this is an opportunity to really kind of get back to focusing on putting broadband in households. And I've always kind of looked at the digital divide, the digital equity space, kind of a bit of a three-legged stool. And I know we're going to wind up talking about all three legs as we go through today's hearing. One is really kind of the digital equity space. The other one is kind of wicket-free wireless, which is more of a convenience for Bostonians and is more in kind of public spaces, near city buildings, things like that. And then there is the proliferation of 5G in the city, because as a lot of people, the only smart device that they have to get on the information superhighway may just be a smartphone, and that's it. So we need to find a way to connect our residents. I know that we are having a lot of ongoing conversations of how we can leverage a lot of these stimulus federal dollars to answer that question. And that is an ongoing conversation. And both Mike Lynch and myself are very passionate about closing this divide. I was just in a conference earlier this week talking about it as well. So it is very much a passion of mine to really focus on closing this divide as much as we can, because it's one of those. It was one of those stark realities as in the early days of COVID-19, and we sent a lot of school-age children home, not knowing if they even have connection at home, and it was a challenging time. So it's an ongoing conversation as we are putting these ideas, pen to paper, and in crafting for some of these federal dollars to address this in the city of Boston. As for projects in the city of Boston that we have postponed because of the pandemic, I know there were some initiatives that we were focused on that we didn't kind of get around to either completing or fully completing. I know we're focused on moving off of more of a reliance of third-party providers. And that didn't kind of fully happen as we were looking to make some kind of, reductions. But being that everyone went remote one day, all of a sudden we needed to bolster up our service desk to support now these remote workers that are not in city buildings anymore. Now they're all over the city of Boston. So that was a bit of a challenging time. There was an operational audit that we had talked about this time last year that we were trying to do, that the COVID-19 really kind of slowed that down a little bit. That is something that we're going to visit. But, I must say, and I'll kind of defer to Eddie to keep me honest here. Through this pandemic, we did not reduce any of our services. We were not only focused internally on DoIT, but we were being, we were being a bit bilingual there. We were not only helping ourselves, we were helping every other department at the same time. So, we were focused on not only the services that we deliver and evolving those and changing those for the pandemic and how our workforce changed, but we were also working with other city departments, standing up call centers for Age Strong and our treasury department, and finding out ways for people to create appointments online, so that when they came into City Hall to conduct their business, they did it in a safe way. So I don't think that we had delayed any major projects because of COVID-19. But before I get kind of to your third question, I'll ask Eddie.
I might have to keep my third question. I see the gavel doing this.
Yeah, we may have to save
sorry.
Councilor Campbell's third question
Yeah.
for the second round.
That's right. And I want to respect my other council colleagues in terms of time. So I can save the third question for the next round, David.
Thanks so much. And I think David, what probably makes sense is for me to go to the next counselor, just because we've gone a while over.
But this is all great. Thank you, David.
You got the first question, so I ran a little long.
It's totally fine. As you should. You guys have done a lot this year, so thank you so much.
Sorry, David, there's nothing more discussed and less respected than my gavel in this process. So, but we and we do try to kind of let everybody get to their turns. So, Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Bach. I think our old friend Pat Brophy would be proud, who's well known for his great answers. But Chief, well said. You can hear the passion in your voice. It goes without saying the remarkable work that everyone in DoIT has done over the last 14, 15 months at this point. And I am so grateful for your leadership and all of your colleagues. Just seeing the people on this call, Mike Lynch, who I know has been a tireless worker. I usually would see Mike Lynch at Harry's All-American Breakfast Joint in our neighborhood. I haven't seen him
on Sunday.
Similarly, Glenn Williams, I'd always see running around Rossi Square. So thank you for your leadership. And one quick shout out to Diana Orthman, who's just been such a great resource to me and my team. And on behalf of everyone, thank you. It's really remarkable how, when we think about sort of post-pandemic life and how challenging this year has been, how so many of us were able to adapt. And I think that it is an embrace of technology unlike we've ever seen. And I think back to my mother, who's somewhat technologically advanced, I would say, but took a class with some of her friends online to learn how to use Zoom so that she could FaceTime and connect with or Zoom with her grandkids. And you saw that. You saw how we were all able to adapt. A year and a half ago, Zoom, Mike Lynch and I thought Zoom was the old PBS show. We didn't even know it was technology that would be such a part of our life.
I love that show.
And I think as it relates to municipal government, and I said this as the acting president, or the president pro tem, we're going to use this, God willing, with some changes to state legislation to allow for better citizen interaction. Similarly, the ZBA has been able to do that. And I would say that you all help facilitate better services. I mean, I won't say we're troglodytes in this city, but we all remember when it was hard to get things done online, which normally would be easy to do and allow for great use. So let's keep that up. I'm delighted to see this increase in your budget to the tune of over 13%. I think it should be 50%, quite frankly, because there's so much more I want to see happen, and I will continue to advocate for that. But I'm just really, really grateful for each and every one of you. I've gone and I think filibustered half my time, so I'll get into it with the questions. It's really, for this round, talking about reopening. I am coming to you from my office. I am on my laptop. This is a pretty good connection, but as the chair knows, it's hit or miss. Just where I am, there is construction outside. But Chief, can you talk about some internal upgrades to our network and increased bandwidth for the fact that we will be using more and more bandwidth? Can you talk sort of briefly about that for the year ahead?
Absolutely. And that is something that we knew was going to be an issue. We've, not only that, but we saw it also with the schools. as their model was changing as well, and they were coming back to classrooms and they were having Zoom sessions. Every student was in a Zoom session, looking at a gallery view as we are looking at today, and understanding the bandwidth of what that takes, from the school that has a fixed amount of bandwidth for each physical location. And we saw that from K through 8, and then when high schoolers started to come back, we saw that as well. As much as we were focused on doing the expansion and creating and being creative with the bandwidth that it had there, we're looking to also do it here as well. So it's a lot of conversations I've had with our chief technology officer, not only kind of really twofold. One, as the guidance that we have given our workers. So we have handed out a lot of laptops, but when people come back to City Hall, they still have their desktops sitting there waiting for them that have been there basically hibernating for the last 15 months. So the focus was really to get a sense of when they come back to use their desktop computers first, so that we can get a sense of, in terms of the wireless connectivity, what does, the city buildings, not only City Hall, but, 1010 and Mass Avenue and Court Street and on and on and on. What is our coverage map going to look like? And that's one of the things that I've been talking about with our chief technology officer, is a coverage map, just focused on City Hall, since most of us are sitting in City Hall.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Chief, but just so for our desktops, though, most we'd need to get a webcam, we need to get speakers.
Correct.
Is that budget, do you have money already allocated for that?
So we did not budget cameras, but we did budget headphones.
Okay.
Because to have this is a benefit to visually see you, but on a Zoom session, as we see from other people, you can still listen and talk and be part of the working in Zoom without visually seeing somebody. So the headsets were actually budgeted.
So you're right. It's no offense to our friends and my colleagues who don't have their cameras on. It is a pet peeve of mine, and I do think, being in the customer service business, as we all are in local government, we should have that option. So I think this underscores both a point and a statement, and I know this isn't your call, but I would urge the acting mayor, as she comes up with other guidelines to return to work, that we do allow flexibility and allow individuals to have some staggered approach, so that they can continue to use their laptops, issued laptops, to work. I've read the entire reopening guidelines. I came up with my own guidelines for the council, which allow more flexibility. But I think we've both discouraged individuals from meeting in person, which I totally get. But we're going to put, I think, more of a really heavy drain and strain on our network. And then if we encourage folks to use desktops as opposed to laptops, which makes sense just in terms of they're hardwired and you're going to get a better connection, but then not allow to at least have the cameras on, or at least we don't have budgeted money for cameras, that's a concern to me, because I think that as we talk about service, seeing individuals, seeing constituents is an important part of that interface. You'd argue that phone calls we aren't able to see, and that's a valid point. But I just think the fact that this technology has been embraced, I want us to continue to use it for both the safety and peace of mind of our employees and the ease of use for our constituents. So I guess that would just sort of be my request going back. Of the laptops that have been handed out to workers, how many? I know you guys working with BPS did 30,000 or so Chromebooks, a staggering number. How many laptops were given to city employees for usage last year?
Sarah, keep me honest here. Was it around 500? 5 or 6?
It was around 400.
400.
That's great. And those individuals will be able to keep those laptops to continue to work from them, or will they have to give them back to you guys?
Some of it ties into our upgrade. So one of the things that we were talking about in the last council hearing is that we were doing our upgrade from Windows 7, which is no longer supported, to Windows 10. So, and then the pandemic hit. So some of our equipment is upgraded, some is not. The goal is that they were going to be focused on keeping their laptops, but we're going to a one device policy. So it's either going to be the desktop or the laptop. We just want to make sure from a laptop perspective that we don't have the experience that that you had mentioned, at the top of your
Yeah.
questions, that they have spotty coverage. So we want to make sure
Totally get that, but I guess to still allow the flexibility of an individual to work from home on certain days or certain hours of the day with a laptop seems to make sense. It would also remove people from using up sort of the bandwidth here. So I know it's complicated, and I don't want us to go too far afield from the purpose of this, which is a budget hearing, other than to say you guys have done remarkable work getting us through the last year. As we talk about reopening, I would again use this opportunity to urge us to take a more methodical approach to reopening. And obviously part of that is safety, is health, is guidelines, but also making sure that we have the technological capability that we can't just a month from now have the building at full capacity and the system could absolutely be put in peril. So, anything we can do in the weeks ahead as we finish our budget process to make sure you have the resources, Chief, and your team, count me in, because I think that I always enjoy this budget hearing because it's really interesting to see how we've embraced technology, how we've developed other apps, how we've worked on things. But I think that now more than ever, people understand that the internet is a utility, is a national utility. We should treat it as such, and make sure that folks have access to it and that it's safe and affordable and always working. So I appreciate all your leadership there, and that will be it for this round. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, President O'Malley.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Next up is Councillor Braden, and then it'll be Councillor Mejia. Councillor Braden.
Thank you. I'm on screen. Thank you very much for your amazing team and all the great work you've done this past 16 months or so. I don't know where we'd have been without the support of DoIT and all of the city departments who, we switched modes of operation very quickly and transitioned to a completely different way of doing things. And now we're on the moment of transitioning back, and it seems like some of the things that we did during the pandemic, we want to continue doing, like hybrid meetings, I would just like to get your insights on the challenges of doing hybrid community meetings, in-person meetings with a hybrid link. Even it's outside, it may be out in a library or a community center or somewhere, but that's something that has a way of increasing our reach and being able to engage with more people. I also had a question about the public libraries and the status of their, they're essential hubs for internet and broadband access. And is there any plans to expand that? Because it just seems that we need to utilize all our city buildings to the utmost to enable better access. And let's see. And I had a question, I'm always intrigued by cybersecurity and it's a bit like the internal combustion engine. I don't necessarily understand how it works, but I know it's essential. In terms of real-time threats, how do we monitor threats and what is the capacity of the city and DoIT to respond, or do you need to draw in support from federal agencies and other cybersecurity agencies and organizations to help in the event of a cyber attack? Thank you. Those are my questions. And if that's secret intelligence, you don't have to share it.
It's all good. All very good questions. I will start with the last one first, because I'm going to hand it over to Greg McCarthy, our Chief Information Security Officer. And and as I said in kind of my opening statement, I don't think a week goes by that we're not hearing a cyber incident, whether it's a gas pipeline or a meatpacking plant or closer to home. And I just heard this morning about the ferry, and the ransomware attack that they had there. Unfortunately, and I think that this term has gotten overused too much recently. I feel like that has become the new normal, is one cyber incident after another. We work on very much a strategy of, there, like I said, there's no 100% guarantee, but it's very much focused on cybersecurity, which is really kind of your forward facing and kind of your perimeter defense, and more cyber resiliency so that when you're being attacked, to minimize the damage, and then cyber response for after an event, how you can quickly respond to recover and things like that. So there's very much a layered approach. I don't want to steal Greg's thunder, so I will pass it over to Greg McCarthy now to kind of unpack that response a little bit more.
Great, thank you, David. Thank you, Counselor. So the first question you touched on was around real-time threat monitoring. So my team works tirelessly to ensure that we're up to date and educated on the most recent threats that are attacking government and private sector individuals. We partner with the federal government, we partner with the state government to get information on a regular basis. We also have third-party partners that provide data to us in order to determine what we call indicators of compromise. So they're known bad things that we look for in our network in order to prevent them from becoming much worse. The other thing that I can share with you is that the City of Boston was one of the founding members of a newly formed coalition of city CISOs. So this is a collaborative partnership across city governments throughout the country. And we share best practices and information. So if San Francisco or Dallas is seeing some sort of cyber attack or cyber disruption, we're looped into that, and we can share best practices and information in real time with each other. So that's a really great network that we are part of, and we were one of the founding members of. From a response perspective, because nothing is 100% secure, we have to be ready to respond if there is some sort of incident. So we work on our incident response process, and part of that is also regularly testing it to make sure that what we've documented as far as a process actually works. So we can simulate certain scenarios and walk through those and say, okay, does step 15 actually make sense to follow in an actual scenario? As I mentioned, we partner with the federal government, we partner with state agencies. Being a government entity, we're very fortunate to have a lot of external resources available to us free of charge, like the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They provide incident response services in the case that we would need them. The federal government, the state agencies, they also provide assistance in the case that we would need some of that. But we do regularly work towards responding to incidents in-house if when possible.
Very good. Thank you.
And I will go to the first question, then I will pass it over to Mike Lynch to see what we can dive into more about the libraries and their expansion in around kind of wireless and broadband expansion and whatnot. So your first questions are around kind of really the lessons learned. There is a task force that we are putting together, and there were a lot of really good things that came out of a very challenging and difficult and impactful time of COVID-19 that I think are very beneficial to keep these things going. And I think you touched on a lot of these community meetings that the engagement was better, which is a great starting point. That's exactly what we want to hear. And as we look at, kind of scheduling services and focus on that digital transformation and putting more of our services online to reduce the need to actually come to a city building, these are the things that we are going to continue to look at. What a hybrid workforce working remotely would look like. We're in conversations about that. That's a little bit more complicated because we're in a heavily unionized environment. So there's a lot of conversations that would need to happen with the union, but we are we are keeping everything on the table. We are really highlighting the things that have really risen to the top during this challenging time that have become very beneficial, and we want to keep them. But I think that there's a great opportunity to really make these part of our new practice going forward. That could bring about engagement, could bring about ease of doing services with municipal government. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm fully in support of this. And I'm a member that's going to be on this task force that is going to be looking at these things. And with technology, really, the doors are wide open with what technology can do. We just need to kind of really understand what the goal is and where we're trying to go. And I see the gavel up.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure you do.
So I will stop, and I guess we'll talk about BPL, in the next round.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I think we keep getting to the point where Mike Lynch is supposed to weigh in. But
he's going to get his moment in the sun.
Yeah, Mike's going to get his 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get back. All right. Next up is Councillor Mejia, and then it'll be Councillor Flynn. And I want to note that we've also been joined by Councillor Michael Flaherty at large. Councillor Mejia.
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. And thank you again to DoIT and your entire team for your hard work. During these most trying times, you guys have risen to the occasion and have over-delivered in so many ways. So we really do appreciate you all. I just have a few questions. I'm curious about how does DoIT work to create new web pages for new programs started in the city that have been passed by the council? I'm thinking particularly around our residential kitchens. We've gotten a lot of requests. And so I'm just curious about what the implementation process looks like for adding new web pages to our city website. The city says that the website is readable at an 8th grade level. I always talk about how some folks are still struggling to read and write, even in their own native language. And I'm wondering how we landed on 8th grade in particular. How was that decision made? There are a lot of people, particularly immigrants, who are not even reading at that capacity. So I'm just curious about kind of like how we landed there and what are we thinking about in terms of expanding that? And then you mentioned a few times in your answers that private companies like Comcast, Verizon, and RCN have all built their broadband infrastructures for far more than the city could do. And are we working with these providers to help expand access to municipal broadband? You've mentioned that their work has created both service providers and competitors, and I'm wondering whether you see them as one or the other.
I will start with the last one first, because this is also a chance for me to tap on Mike Lynch. Yes, we work with all the major carriers, and we really see them as a partner in focusing on our broadband providers. It's an opportunity to really expand the proliferation of connectivity around the city of Boston. So it's good that we are bringing about the competition between them, which is great, having options for Bostonians. It's also good for bringing down price. But this is a great opportunity as we kind of look forward in partnering with a lot of companies like Comcast, which was critical in the Internet Essentials, giving connectivity for very low cost during this very difficult time, from working with Verizon to help their build out, working with them on their 5G deployment. So this is everyone is really kind of stepping up to the plate as we start to kind of build out options through the city. Michael, I'm not sure, this first time I'm calling on you. Anything you'd like to add before I turn it over to Jeanette on digital?
Oh, just briefly, thank you. Regarding the broadband providers, Comcast and Verizon are the big ones. Comcast started as a TV cable company and is now essentially a broadband provider. Verizon started as a phone company, but really is a broadband and wireless provider in Boston. We have a few other companies too. RCN is one And there's also Starry, which is a new provider, does wireless for rooftops. BHA is working on a pilot with them. And NetBlazer, who do a number of smaller MDU buildings across the city as well, kind of a community-oriented wireless provider. All of them are providing kind of ubiquitous coverage across the city. The city's network is slightly different. The city's network is for city use because we don't actually own the fiber that we're using. We got it from these companies with the proviso that we wouldn't compete with them. At the same point, we have the coverage we need across the city. Our challenge, as the councilor appropriately raised, is it is expensive. And that's where we come in and we try to fill the gaps where we can. David, the reason I took this opportunity, and Councilor, if you'll allow me, one of the key elements is that just in the last week, one of the big federal programs, the Emergency Broadband Benefit, came into action. I think it was May 12th. This will give people in need $50 a month to cover their cost of broadband. But it's a little complicated and messy to get there. You got to go to your provider, you got to get your hotspot, you got to file the stuff with the FCC. It's tricky. We are working with probably 200 social service agencies across the city to get their clients, residents, access to this funding so that it'll be able to bring them into the digital world without sort of that economic penalty of an expensive added cost. What I will do after the hearing is share some slides and some information with the councilors. Hopefully this information can get out through your avenues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. As for our webpage and in the process for getting them online and in the how we landed on an 8th grade reading level, I'll turn that over to Jeanette Falvey, our Chief Digital Officer, who's in charge of Boston.gov and all the web pages.
Hi, everyone. And sorry, as if on cue, my 4-month-old woke up just before this, so he's joining me for this answer. And if I do go off camera, it's just because I have to nurse. But thank you for having me be a part of this today. It's a pleasure to be with you all. This is a great question. I'm so glad you asked. We follow, well, in 2010, the federal government put out plain language guidelines for all government websites to follow. And so we were happy to institute that across Boston.gov and anything we are a part of that's distributed in print as well. So we follow that guidance, and that's at plainlanguage.gov. And we understand that we're fortunate in the Boston area to be able to target an 8th grade level, but we know that that certainly does not meet everyone's needs. I've worked in my previous roles when I worked for the federal government in many communities in Massachusetts where 5th grade was actually more the average, and that's actually pretty consistent across the country. So we're aware that this still doesn't support everybody, and it is definitely an effort to get all of our content there. I will say that this is a constant project with all of our partners across our departments. So we set that as our target goal, and because the way the team is set up and we're at the top of the editorial stream, my team can ensure that we do meet this for any pages that we publish. So certainly a great question. Do you have a clarifying?
I
see your hand
do. And I don't know if the gavel is upon me or not, but I do wonder and just curious as we start thinking about how do we address the issue of literacy for folks who are struggling to read and write in their native language. What are we doing to utilize videos and audio files and other mechanisms to be able to engage and connect and provide information to folks in ways that they can access it, right? So I'm just always thinking about information justice and just want to make sure that we're considering and exploring multiple ways to be able to connect people to the information that they're seeking.
Absolutely. This falls under something that I and the team are incredibly passionate about, and that's called user experience. So this is a practice across the digital world to really think through how people that are using the website are really experiencing it. How can we make it more accessible? And that has a large part to play with everything we produce. We think through not just how it's written, how it's presented, what media we can use to make it more accessible. Exactly what you're saying. We have the digital storytellers on the digital team to help break things down wherever possible. You know, we use them in a variety of different ways. Where we have complex subject matter or longer term stories to tell about the city's work, we employ them to do that. We also work with them to help elevate residents' voices and make sure that we're telling those stories as well about our community. But accessibility and user experience, this is the entire team's focus. By making things at or below an 8th grade reading level wherever possible, that makes it easier to translate. We've also employed the use of a small local firm here in Boston called Iterators. They have been a wonderful partner in ensuring accessibility levels on boston.gov. So we've done a lot of work this year to make sure that we truly meet WCAG AA standards for accessibility. We've partnered with the Disabilities Commission as well to make sure that we're prioritizing where their hearing constituents need the most support on the website. So we've done work like ensuring the color contrast on our visual media actually meets the needs of those with vision impairments. We make sure that the entire website can actually be navigated with a keyboard. So we can't take anything for granted. We have to constantly be working to make sure that the website works for everyone, and accessibility is something that is never done, but we are working at continuously.
Thank you for that. And I'm happy to partner with you all in that work. And well, just last thing that I'll say before Council Bach gives me the gavel is the use of symbols instead of the name of the language. Flags are visual indicators of what things can be potentially translated upon. And so I think that, you know, just when we think about accessibility, the use of flags of different countries will help with folks if they're looking for translation, but they don't know how to read, that a visual symbol could help with that as well. So that's it. And thank you so much for all your hard work, and feel free to reach out to our office for any support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Great, thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Councilor Bach. And I also wanted to highlight the exceptional work of the DoIT team, especially during the last year, this difficult year for everybody. I held a hearing on digital equity in the past and wrote a op-ed with Councilor Mejia on this issue, working with Tech Goes Home. But I understand that 1 in 5 people in Boston are struggling with digital access, digital equity related issues, especially as Jeanette mentioned, our seniors, our immigrant neighbors, immigrants. But I represent the largest district with the residents living in public housing and immigrants as well. What are we going to do to expand services for residents living in hard to reach areas or targeted demographics such as immigrants, such as BHA residents, seniors, persons with disabilities? I was glad to hear you're doing a lot of good outreach on that. But what else can we do? And as a city council standpoint, I would really like to see us do more than what we are doing now. And if we are able to do more with more funding, please let us know, and we can advocate for funding in the budget. I certainly will. And I'll listen to your comments. I want to say thank you to the DoIT team, David, Michael, I see you all there, Greg, Eddie, Jeanette. I see my old friend Mike Lynch and my old friend Glenn Williams down there in the corner. Good to see you, Glenn. And that's all I have, Councilor Bach. I'll listen to the questions, okay? I'll listen to the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I share your passion, and as I said in my opening statement and through some of the responses, this has been a very difficult time with people that are underserved or very much have do not have access to broadband and are not feeling connected. And I can't imagine a worse situation than when you're in the middle of a pandemic and you're trying to get information, you're trying to understand what's going on. So, I mean, with that, Michael, I'd love to, turn it over to you. I know that you love to kind of talk about this topic. So, I mean, I'll pass it over to our friend, Mike Lynch.
Thanks, David. And Councilor Flynn, thank you. You've been very attentive to the issue of digital equity and digital inclusion. Just to touch on some of the issues, I made quick notes as you were asking the question. I think looking back, I think the last year and a quarter, 16 months was throwing Band-Aids at a problem. And we recognized a lot of it. We may not have recognized all of it. But now as the dust begins to settle and we move out of the pandemic and into the future, we're doing many things to address digital equity and digital inclusion. You see Sarah Figueroa here. She kind of champions a meeting that we meet once or twice a week with Age Strong, BHA, BPL, and BPS, talking about the different initiatives that they're doing. Housing Authority has surveyed all of its residents to kind of assess what their needs are, and they're working on a plan right now to do sort of a wireless distribution off the rooftops of some housing developments to solve that problem. BPL used to be restricted on how they could spend money on Wi-Fi. They could only do it inside the walls of the libraries. That rule changed in the last year. So now they're putting, they've already identified, I think, 170 wireless access points that they're in neighborhood libraries that they're putting outside of the buildings. Age Strong and Emily Shea have surveyed the seniors, and they have identified with the social service agencies how they can come to the rescue. Again, it's not, it's messy because it's not one simple answer anymore. EBB, the program I mentioned earlier, the emergency broadband benefit, if folks can qualify and they can navigate the torturous process of application, that will spare them the expense of a connection in their home or a hotspot for their wireless. As Sarah, I can turf it to Sarah Fig at some point here. The Digital Equity Fund is a fund that the city has. We threw $100,000 at it. Age Strong came back with another $150,000. We're going to give $250,000 to social service agencies directly tied to the constituencies that you're talking about, Counselor. And I think the last time we did this was about a year and a half ago. We got maybe, 18 or 20 applications. This year we got over 100. So Budget has asked us, and I said, well, if you got that many, do you need some help? So they're looking to find more dollars to spend, but we know we're going to put $250,000 out the door this month. Right, Eddie? I hope so. And then after that, I believe you are voting on as a council sometime this month, an additional $1 million that's also aligned with digital equity spending this year. I think in some respects, looking at everything that has been done over the last 16 months, I think that we have been doing a lot of react and quick response work. And now we're planning for the future, coming out the other side of it. I'm hoping we're successful. The one program I mentioned from the feds, the emergency broadband benefit, is directed at citizens. The other programs, the emergency connectivity fund and some of the larger ARPA funding, can be used for a variety of things. Boston is a little bit handicapped using it for broadband because the rules say on both funds, if you have 25 megabit down and 3 up in a census block, I see Dan Noyes is on here. He can correct me if I'm wrong. You cannot use this money to build a network. Even though we can't use it to build a network, we have resources out there. We simply have to extend them and push them out or provide directly to consumers. And I think that is what we're going to be focused on over the next year. There is a frightening amount of money available here. I think there's $3 billion inside the emergency broadband benefit, and there is $7 billion inside the emergency connectivity fund. I can't get my head around those numbers, but we are trying to act fast because we're fairly certain if we don't, the providers will find a way to take all that money. Sorry.
Thank you, Michael. And I see the chair has her gavel up, which means my time has expired. And I just want to say thank you. If I could add one more sentence, not a question, just something to think about. The Chinatown area is struggling with digital equity related issues. for a variety of reasons, but maybe offline, if we can talk further about this, that would be helpful.
Absolutely, sir.
Absolutely, Counselor.
Okay, thank you, Council Buck.
Thank you so much, Councillor Flynn. Next up is Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to David and to Mike for the work they've been doing throughout the pandemic. Obviously, the public service announcements, et cetera, have been extremely helpful for our constituents. And I've been listening, so I know that asked and answered around the digital divide and digital equity. Appreciate your efforts on that front. My concerns obviously remain the same as they've been in the past, is just making sure that we're able to attract, and retain, talented IT professionals and specialists. That's always been a challenge for us as a city. And so making sure that we continue to reach out and attract the talent to help us, be able to navigate, obviously, the technological advances. I know oftentimes folks will pass, could be a salary issue, and or if we have someone, they tend to move on, and it seems to be salary driven. So to the best of our ability, we need to continue to be able to attract the talent. So I want to make sure that stays on the forefront. Security, also taking advantage of the latest technology to make sure that all of our systems are secure, and make sure that we're paying attention to that. And then lastly, we saw this, the council's been asking for this prior to the pandemic, but we saw it throughout the pandemic, which is, allowing folks the ability to transact city business from home and or, through Zoom. So that needs to obviously be factored in moving forward as a municipality. And, whether that's, watching, a hearing and or paying a ticket, or being able to access some other information and or do some business with the city, that needs to be on the forefront, I think, moving forward. And hopefully we have technology to embrace that. So I guess if there's anything that you guys need from us, or ways we can be helpful to make sure that we're staying on the cutting edge, not only just with our equipment and security, but also with talent. And I guess now's the opportunity to ask. So appreciate the work you guys are doing, and just want to opine about those have been, my issues, obviously making sure that, we're making City Hall and our city departments more user friendly, so that people are able to do that, to transact that business via their computer, versus having to come into downtown, sit in traffic, circle the block, get a spot, and or worse, get a ticket. It's just sort of it's stuff that moving forward we should be able to eliminate, given that we've been doing that throughout the entire pandemic. And hopefully whatever systems and software and programs that you guys need to make that happen, I think that needs to be a priority. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll listen to comments from Dave or Mike.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. I mean, in all very good points, and all things that I'm very, very passionate about it. I mean, you just read right from the top three in my playbook. Attracting and retaining talent is always a challenge. From being in the technology space for over 30 years, the thing I can tell you is that it is challenging, because technology folks do make some big salaries. And I think you had mentioned it, that, attracting them is one thing, and that's the first hurdle, but retaining them, which is more kind of a strategy and more ongoing, is also a challenge as well, when you can't pay the salaries that the private sector pays. So you're really looking for people that are really kind of passionate about the work that we do, and the impact that we have. One of the things that brought me from, being in the private sector for over 28 years to the public sector, being very close to the people that I'm making a difference in. As for cybersecurity, being a former CISO myself, I mean, it is an ongoing thing. There is no end state. As good as you have it, tomorrow's another day with new threats, and it's in an ongoing challenge that it's something that needs to be approached from a very layered strategy, starting off really kind of with your end users, which are a bit of your first line defense and also one of your biggest risks, around, setting up complicated passwords and best practice about not sharing information, all the way to having really good service providers that are going to work with you to not only help in your defense, but also be there when you need to respond to an incident, and then everything in between. So it is an ongoing challenge. It's something that Greg and I talk about a lot, and it's an ongoing process. And as for the digital transformation, that is also something very important that I talk about as well a lot, that there are multiple, and this is the way I've always kind of approached it. There are multiple generations out there that all want to interface with municipal government in a very different way. And I could, just as kind of an example, I think of, the banking industry. I can't remember the last time that I was actually at a physical bank. Everything's kind of done online now, and and it's the same kind of transformation. There are a segment of the population that still probably likes to come to City Hall, and there's a segment of the population that still wants to do everything online. And then there's the middle, and making sure that, as Jeanette kind of talked about, as you focus on that experience and making sure that everyone has that experience with getting their business done and interfacing with municipal government in a very leveled view and focused on that user experience. So that is part of that digital transformation, which is an ongoing thing, as we do still have a lot of services that are needing to go online and kind of move away from, a lot of the paper that we have here. So it's an ongoing work in progress, and that has been something that has been in last year's budget, in this year's budget, on that journey to creating those user experiences for Bostonians. Mr. Lynch, you have your hand up.
Well, I couldn't resist, David. Councilor Flaherty, you raised an issue that Councilor Braden raised as well, and that would be civic engagement. And I couldn't not take the opportunity to say, just this week, we're installing some equipment in the city council chambers with Kerry Jordan, as well as over at the bowling building and in room 801 and 901, to make sure that our hybrid model and our civic engagement platform is even better going forward. In addition, we've been working with city council staff and the city clerk's office on the new platform of legislative information management system, which we're using the vendor called Granicus, respected across the country, and we have great hopes for its success.
Thank you, Mike, on that. And one thing I'll note is that Kerry Jordan is completely off limits to do it. How's that sound? He's been my best hire as a city council, as council president. So he's done amazing work for us. Just in general, he's an amazing guy, but particularly during the pandemic, Kerry and the team that we have really went above and beyond to make sure that city council business was getting done, and obviously that we were engaged and getting testimony and feedback from the public. So, and I know you guys work closely with him. He's an absolute ace, and I don't need to tell you guys about that. And one thing I could just say to David is that, David, these are the opportunities you, as obviously a department head, as chair, you have the ability to turn around and to work with the council through the administration to increase those salary ranges. So if you take a look at the salary ranges for the employees that fall under your umbrella, if they're sort of under market, if you will, then, there's an opportunity there to have those conversations to give us that information so we could potentially expand those ranges so that we could help you attract and or retain the talent. That's a big piece of this as well. So that's one of our primary functions and our fiduciary responsibility to the residents and the taxpayers. And through this budget process, if those salary ranges are not adequate for you to retain and attract the talent, then now's the time to kind of let us know so we can talk about maybe making some adjustments moving forward with respect to the salary ranges. We do it by way of ordinance. So let us know if we can help you on that front. And thank you, Madam Chair, and keep up the great work for DoIT, Dave and Mike.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty.
Great, thanks so much, Councilor Flaherty. I'll ask some questions now, and then because this is also the hearing on the PEG Access Fund, I'm looking forward to going to BNN and Tech Goes Home to hear from them, and we'll take Councilor second round questions after that. I guess since we were just talking about the personnel thing, picking up on that, you know, David, how much, I mean, I'm aware from my prior work in a large bureaucracy that sometimes, I mean, you know, for good reason, within a unionized job context, we have job descriptions and such. But in a world in which you're dealing with innovation and technology, that can be really challenging because you can end up in a situation where you have workforces that are trained on and job descriptions that call for expertise in now obsolete systems, right? And now sometimes the person who manages the obsolete system is like the most valuable person to you because you're the only one still using the system. So I'm not knocking expertise in obsolete systems at the appropriate time, but I do just wonder, are we and the union working together with sort of sufficient speed to make sure that, you know, when we're posting and hiring, we're doing it for the capacities that we need for managing the kind of like right up to this moment type of technological things that we're managing.
No, absolutely, you know, Madam Chair, and it's a great question. And I'm gonna kind of lean on Eddie Pinkerton to fill a little bit in there as our personnel officer, but it as in technology, in the rate of technology changing, you know, it's very much focused on maintaining your current environment while you're building your future and making sure that you are having the right people with the right skills to not only maintain your current environment, but the right people as you look forward, as you may change platforms, as you may change software packages that understand and know going forward how the environment is going to be changing, not only in DoIT, but, you know, across the city of Boston. And we have an eye fixed on that. And, you know, and I focus on Eddie, who probably, you know, between most of us, really kind of leans and really works closely, you know, with OHR and with OLR, and, you know, with our unions. So, you know, Eddie, if you have anything you want to kind of add to the importance of this topic.
Yeah, I'll make a little bit of a plug for HR transformation. So with the work that they've been doing in OHR over the last, I think about 2 years now, we've seen a drastic improvement in the timing of how job descriptions are moving through. So the class and comp group has been fantastic to work with. Honestly, right now they're turning things around in almost a 48-hour time period, which is I feel almost unprecedented. And then also OLR and the unions have been great to work with. I think we do have a unique challenge where technology has changed so much of our job descriptions. I mean, I've pulled things from files that still have typewriter, and it's a technology being used. So there's definitely a lot of modernization, but I think across the board, what we've seen is everyone is on board and helping us make those changes, from OHR to OLR to the union. So I would say we don't have a lot of hurdles in accomplishing what we want to from a talent and skills perspective when it comes to updating our job descriptions.
All right, well, that's good to hear. And in terms of that operational audit that didn't happen last year, what is the sort of timeline expectation on
that? Eddie, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I would say we don't have a firm timeline right now. We're going to be working with A&F to kind of solidify that. I would say right now for DoIT's perspective, we are very much focused on this return to work. So I would say internally, we have not had the conversations of how we want to kick that off, but I think from a leadership at A&F level, we are talking about the re-engagement of it. But unfortunately right now, Council Block, we don't have a hard set timeline, but we'll definitely inform council as things progress on that matter.
Okay, great. And when we were talking with YEE on Tuesday, I guess that was 2 days ago now, you know, it's been a continual focus of mine to figure out how we streamline the process in which they onboard, you know, several thousand youth each summer, because you know, my office ran one of the Success Link programs last summer, and we just consistently see young people getting caught up in the queues. And sometimes, yes, you're chasing young people for their papers, and that's a whole context, right? And I think because of the grant program, because of that, we've moved towards the grant program option and such. But there are definitely significant moments where the young people have all their paperwork in, and what we're waiting on are levers to be pushed on the city side. And so I understand that that there's been some work on kind of process mapping and trying to tighten it up between DoIT and YEE and OHR, which I'm grateful for. I want to both underscore the importance of that, and then also specifically it came up that the question of being able to keep young people who did the Summer Success Link program sort of in the system so that they could then start a year-round job, which is a program that we're obviously ramping up and we think is an important complement. So often where you kind of lose young people who you're putting on a great track is in the failure of those handoffs. And we've kind of set up a system where we inherently drop them for 4 months. It sounded like there was still a kind of DoIT OHR sign off needed for a way to keep them in the system. So I wanted to ask, I don't know who on this call is the most appropriate person for that, but ask sort of where we are on that.
I know this was a topic that we had touched on last summer as well, is to your point that they all kind of drop and then we lose, we lose them, kind of in that pipeline. And I know that we are working with the A&F cabinet to see about how we can, or at least from a system side, we keep them in the system to make sure that we understand the process well enough to understand the requirements in why they were dropping, and to understand that if it's a technology barrier, removing that. But I don't know if Sarah or you or Jeanette working on that with YEE and with HR and the summer programs?
So although I have not been working with them, I think this is a topic that we all feel strongly about. So I am more than happy to kind of figure out where that stands and get you an update.
That would be great. I would very much appreciate it.
Perfect.
And just like a little bit of the sort of, budget hat thing. So what's looking at where we were, where DoIT was with it bending 3/4 of the way through the year. Overtime is over. I think we all know why that is. But it looks like, but you do, so I'm assuming from your budgeting that you think that's a one-time pandemic bump because you're back down to last year's with your budget. And then telecommunications is way below being on pace for the year. What's going on with that?
Eddie, you want to take that one?
Yep. Yeah, and Councilor Bach, you're spot on overtime. We are anticipating as we get back to normal operations that should even out. From a telecoms perspective, I think there's a little bit of from our telecom team's deployment of VoIP, we're seeing a little bit of a cost reduction over time. So I think there's been some work internally to help us maintain costs there. I can dive into a little bit more. I don't have a great answer off the top of my head for any more specifics beyond the work that we've done around VoIP. So happy to follow up with that. But I know from my conversations with the managers on that group, there's been a lot of effort to help maintain costs and to reduce that across reduce the impact across the city, because there's also telecom charges that other departments have as well, beyond just what DoIT has in our budget.
Got it. But you're saying that because we've implemented Voice over Internet Protocol, is that what that stands for? I forget.
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
Voice over the data network.
Yeah. So we're with the plan that we are anticipating seeing a little bit of a reduction in costs overall from what we've traditionally had. I'm not the expert in that technology,
but we haven't yet. But we're not yet adjusting that aspect of DoIT's budget downwards to reflect those savings.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, at some point, we should be doing that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and then I guess I wanted to touch back, Mike, on. So I've sit on the soapbox before. I appreciated your detailed answer in writing to me about the municipal broadband thing. I understand the point that we are not a like small town somewhere with nobody laying any fiber, right? And so we're in a different spot. I still think that there are a variety of utilities in this country where the history was, oh, everybody starts thinking a railroad is a great idea. A whole bunch of rival private companies start laying railroads. Everyone's like, yeah, the private companies have that covered. Then it turns out railroads don't make any sense if you don't sync the time schedules. And eventually you end up with unified networks. Same thing with like water. Like if you told me, oh, we've got 5 private water companies running water to everybody in the city of Boston, like at some point it's like, yeah, but everybody needs water. So I don't want them to be cut off from it if they can't pay for it. And so I just, at a kind of like century level view, I just think we're headed towards municipal broadband. And it feels to me like it's like, are we one of the first or one of the last? So that's more of a comment. And I think since I've run out of my own time, I'll leave that for a response from Mike in the second round. I think I would like to just come back a little bit on that and then also just land again on the point that you were making about those billions of dollars from the feds and sort of what we do to make sure that we get them for municipal purposes and not for the private side, because I do really want to have like a focus on that. And it sounds like it would be helpful for the council to understand a little better, even going into the ARP supplemental hearing next week. So I'll come back on those in my second round. Before we do councilor second rounds, there is, like I said, this hearing is also about authorizing the PEG Access Fund. Chief, I don't know if you or anybody on your team want to say a quick word about that fund from DoIT's perspective, but then I want to go to Glenn Williams from BNN and Dan Noyes and his team from Tech Goes Home for a few comments.
I'm confident that Mike Lynch wants to have an opening statement with the PEG funding.
Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been down this road before. We have a couple of fantastic community partners here in Tech Goes Home and Boston Neighborhood Network. The funding which we receive and you accept and expend through the 21st Century Access Fund is funding that comes from the fees that subscribers pay to cable TV. It's kind of a legacy thing. There are less subscribers today for cable TV than there used to be, but we are able to be very creative in funding these agencies and helping to sort of, I think, bridge the digital divide with those dollars. The only thing I might add is if you have cable TV and you're thinking of shutting it off, do not, because you are supporting digital equity in the city of Boston.
Great, thank you so much, Mike, for those comments. And in terms of what you're supporting, I will go now to Glenn Williams from BNN. Glenn, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and your fellow city councilors. Like Michael said, I'm Glenn Williams. I'm the general manager of Boston Neighborhood Network, Boston's nonprofit charitable public access TV and radio provider and fully equipped digital media center. I am proud to be with you today on behalf of BNN in support of this order to fund the public educational and government access service. That's PEG, known as PEG when we say PEG. That BNN provides Boston's cable viewers, radio listeners, and residents. Through the dedication of our staff, BNN has fulfilled its commitment to our mission to provide a voice for our citizens, to inform the people of Boston with every aspect of the issues connected to living safely. We provided our membership with free Zoom classes to afford them the opportunity to continue their programming on both television and radio through this long pandemic. We've applied for a grant so that we can get some hotspots, because what we've discovered here is that digital equity, everyone kept talking about digital equity. We still have people who are, if they're on their computer or something, and Aunt Claire upstairs answers the cell phone, it's a battle on who is actually going to be using that. So we've made a move in that particular direction. Our partnership with the administration and teachers of the Boston Public Schools has provided our scholars a valuable tool to enhance the challenges associated with remote learning. We connected students with over 900 hours of programming produced by those teachers and our staff, almost half of which was live production, live programming into the home. extra help. So students who are coming up with their whatever kind of tests, they can dial into BNN Live and have a live conversation with a math teacher from the Boston Public Schools to discuss the things that they may not be understanding. We recognize this success through the thousands of video on demand views registered on our website. And with the live coverage of the Boston Arts Academy graduation at Fenway Park on June 17th, we look forward to continuing this partnership for years to come. With the addition of institutions like BU Wheelock, they have a social injustice and equity webinar series that we run. Friendship First, which is a seniors living program, Mass College of Art and Design, and the contributions from Boston, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center from their Center of Virology and Vaccine Research. We continue to inform our neighborhoods with the information needed to make the decisions to enhance their life. Because of the COVID problem that we've all gone through, one of the things that we've discovered nationally is the appreciation and the need for your PEG access stations. I sit on several chairs, some of them that are nationally, and that's some of the things that get talked about all the time. I know that some of you have been on a variety of programs at BNN, some of you with me, and I will say to Councilor O'Malley, I will miss you, sir. It was always a fun time to call and ask you to sit in and talk me off the roof sometimes. I appreciate everything that you've done. I hope you will recognize the enormous contribution BNN has made to the community of Boston. I've been associated with Boston Neighborhood Network for 26 years as a television and radio host, producer, member of the board of directors, WBCN radio manager, and now the general manager. I've seen this organization grow to the award-winning Access Media Center it is today. I'm not going to list all of the awards, but one I'm incredibly proud of this year is that we have won a national award with the Alliance for Community Media as the most outstanding community radio station in the country. And we're going to be receiving that award later on this month. It's very, very rewarding to see that we get that kind of recognition, because the cats here work really hard to make sure that we put out a quality product. Many of our memberships, BNN Media, I mean, with our many memberships, BNN Media will also be available to provide engineering and technical support to the Boston PEG channels, including Boston City TV, and Boston Kids and Family TV, and of course, WBCN, our radio station. We will be opening soon. Last Tuesday, our staff came to work. They're at their desks and they're working. We've been working remotely. We're getting our building ready for members. We have a huge plan that's already being folded into place. And by the middle of July, we're expecting to have these studios open and running efficiently. On behalf of BNN, I'd like to thank the City Council, Mayor Kim Janney, Chief of Operation David. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Mike Lynch and everyone at DoIT, and Justin Petty, the board president, for your commitment in sustaining BNN Media, a place for Boston residents to create local programming for the good of their neighbors. Without the support of the City of Boston throughout its cable and radio licenses, we would not be able to serve so many Boston residents and nonprofits over the many years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Glenn, and thank you so much for your service in informing the public. We really appreciate it. And I think we're all fans of BNN on the council. Next up, I'm going to go to Dan Noyes from the Tech Goes Home team. And Dan, I see that you've also got Marvin Vinay with you. So obviously, look forward to you all sharing the floor. So take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to let Marvin, for those of you that know me, this is very painful, but I'm going to let Marvin talk more than me. But Mike, did you hear Councilor President O'Malley say he wants to increase funding 50% at the beginning of this meeting? I think I heard that.
What is that?
So David, I'm going to call you after this so we can have a conversation about that. But I'm so excited to be.
Dan, at least 50%, but it might be more if Marvin can show what pocket square he's sporting today.
Oh, don't get Marvin going on pocket squares, Counselor.
All right. Order.
No, thank you for being here. I am going to introduce you to Marvin Vinay, who is our one of our latest hires at Tech Goes Home, our new director of advocacy, which is a new opportunity for us, a big step for us, I think, moving forward. So with that, I'm turning it over to Marvin and his self-made pocket square, Councilor O'Malley.
Greetings. Good morning, Chairwoman and the rest of the council. As it's already been shared, my name is Marvin Vinay. I am the Director of Advocacy for Tech Goes Home, a leading nonprofit in Greater Boston devoted to addressing digital inequity. I'm testifying this morning in favor of this order to fund the PEG Access Fund. This fund provides critical support for connecting individuals and families with digital devices, internet connectivity, and the skills training they need to overcome barriers, access essential services online, and capitalize on opportunities presented by the digital world. First of all, I'd like to thank the City Council for your attention to the digital inequity over the past year. Digital inequity impacts individuals and families across Boston, especially those already facing disproportionate barriers resulting from poverty, homelessness, digital access, and food insecurity, systemic racism, and more. COVID-19 has also worsened persistent disparities in digital access and reinforced how important it is that we work collectively to ensure equitable, sustainable access for everyone in Boston. Digital devices and internet connectivity, plus the ability to use them effectively, are essential to participating in school, finding and maintaining employment, accessing telehealth, connecting with loved ones, and more. And in response to the pandemic, TGH adapted its work to expand access to our programming while keeping staff, trainers, and learners safe. In addition, to continue to provide each learner with a digital device and internet access, we launched a distance learning program that mirrors our in-person courses, created a COVID-19 resource page on our website, and developed a live webinar series for TGH learners and the general public. This would not be possible without steadfast support from the City of Boston and the funding that comes through the PEG Access Fund. Working with more than 180 community partners, we prioritize low-income and underserved populations aged 3 to 94, including people without technology at home who are or underemployed, have limited English proficiency, are living with disabilities, and are experiencing housing instability. Of the population that TGH serves, 77% of TGH households have incomes under $35,000. 90% are people of color. Nearly 50% are all from immigrant families, and 34% of the adult learners are unemployed. In the past 5 years alone, TGH programming has served over 21,000 learners and distributed nearly 14,000 new computers. This year, our goal is to serve 5,500 learners through our programs. Though we have worked tirelessly to build our philanthropic support to marry the city's essentials commitment, we need significantly increased support from both the public and private sector if we are going to end this inequity effectively. With the support of the council and approval of the funding in the PEG Access Fund, we are eager to continue this partnership and better the lives of Boston neighbors. To learn more about our work, please, as you all know, visit techgoeshome.org or feel free to reach out to me at any time at marvin@techgoeshome.org. I'd like to thank you all for all that you do for the residents of our city. And Dan and I are here to answer any questions that might be at your desire. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Marvin and Dan, and again to Glenn. We really appreciate all of you guys. And I did want to get you all in so that counselors could ask their next round of questions. Before we do that, I just want to we do have one member of the public who is waiting to testify. And I think rather than making him wait for a whole second round, I'm going to let him come and testify. And then we will jump to the top of the order for questions.
Great.
So Mr. Sean Riley, if you'd like to give your public testimony now, just ask you to identify yourself, state your residence or affiliation, and make your comment.
Certainly. Can you hear me, Councilor Bach?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Sean Riley. I'm a resident of the Fenway neighborhood. I'd like to start off by thanking my counselor, Councilor Bach, and her staff for advising me about today's hearing and encouraging me to provide the testimony. So I wanted to speak today because there's a massive security issue with the City of Boston's new Be Local app. So I've worked in the tech industry for over 15 years, but to kind of explain it as quickly and simply as possible for those who aren't tech savvy, I'll kind of give a summary of what's happening. But at that point, I urge the city, the councilors here and the Department of IT to immediately suspend this app and to fix the security issue until it's been resolved. So brief background for those who don't know, the city's new Be Local app, and the way that I found out about it, it was reported on the Globe and Boston.com about a month and a half ago. It apparently uses federal COVID funding to help support local Boston restaurants and businesses with a cashback program. It's a great program. I love that. I think that's a great way to do it. But here's the problem. The city chose to partner with an app company called Colu, which is not based in Boston, to build the Be Local app. And the way that the app tracks purchases for the cashback program is the problem. They basically had two options. So either you use some kind of digital punch card to reward people that spend at Boston businesses, or you track it through debit and credit card information. And they chose to track it through debit and credit card. And I actually personally also agree with that. There are many other programs out there right now that do similar things. The problem, and this is the major security issue, is that within the app, they made a horrible mistake on how they implemented the collection of this credit and debit card information. Here's what the app does. Rather than ask for credit and debit card numbers, which is what many other apps in the network, reward networks is a perfect example. If any of you have these programs through your airline, you can sign up and get free points when you stay at certain restaurants. But what this does is that it asks for the, rather than the 16-digit number, it asks for the username and password for all of your financial institutions via this third-party platform called Plaid. So for a reward app, again, designed to help give back to Boston businesses, the City of Boston is currently endorsing an app that through a third party asks people to give them their username and password to do this. It is a terrible idea. It should frankly never have been allowed to launch. I'm very disappointed that it's kind of come to that. And here are kind of the two reasons. And again, I'm speaking from the tech space. You should never, ever, ever be asked to give your username and password to a third party. And this kind of breaks two fundamental internet security rules. And again, these are for people that are more tech savvy as opposed to those who aren't. You should never give your credentials to a third party because you have no idea what they're doing. Within an app, it's not like going on a website where, for instance, if you type in chase.com, you can see there's that green little lock, that your connection is secure. Within an app, you have no way to know this for sure. And again, this uses actually an iframe platform within the app. So there's no way to know whether it's secured or unsecured. And this, again, is separate from whether or not it should even be asked to begin with. The second part of this is the Plaid platform actually requires this password to be stored in plain text because they have to do it on the back end to log people in. So again, today, the City of Boston has approved an app asking for financial institution username and password through a third party. And this is exactly what scammers around the world ask people to do. They say, through apps, through malicious websites, give us this information. They pretend to be Chase, they pretend to be Bank of America, and we'll help you with this. And again, we, in the tech community have always said, never, never, never give username and password info, particularly to financial institutions. And again, for those of you looking within the app, they even use the logos of the banks, implying that it is secure or somehow partnered with them, which it isn't. So there's one last thing I'll say very quickly. And again, I'm happy to take questions, but here's the information. In addition to the massive security, issues. Here's the other big problem. The Plaid platform on its own privacy website admits it takes your account information, financial institution name, account type, account ownership, your branch number, the account number, the routing number. It will store all of this. It stores your credit account number, your due dates, balances owed, payment amounts, dates, transaction history, credit limit, repayment, loan accounts, loan due dates, repayment status, balance, identifiers about the account owners, including name, email address, phone number, date of birth, and address. All of this just to try to use a rewards app. So again, I strongly encourage you to take a look at this. And in the meantime, this app needs to be shut down. The city should not be supporting and endorsing an app that is asking for this kind of information, particularly for a rewards program. But again, I would love to get the Department of IT to kind of give feedback and hopefully admit this is an issue and shut it down until it can be fixed.
Thank you, Sean. And Sean, just from a disclosure perspective, do you work for a company that works in this space?
No, I do not. I'm actually a research director.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll just say I did ask a question about this at the hearing for the Office of Economic Development, and I know that what I heard from Natalia there was that Plaid was partnered with the banks, and that the city did consider it a secure platform. But I think obviously Sean's raising it to do it, and it's another thing that it would be good for us to address here in the public space, since, as I said to Natalia at the time, I do think that people are not, I think there's two separate questions, right? There's the security of the credentials, and I guess I was somewhat put at ease by conversation on that. And then there's the question of just people are not used to that kind of login yet on lots of things. And so would love to hear a little bit from DoIT on that.
So, I mean, all very good points. Thank you, Mr. Riley, for bringing this up. And this is something that I'll address with DOE. But yeah, the way it has been kind of laid out, it's not only pulling those credentials, it's also how they're being stored, how they're being used. So I get that this is, a concern. I will definitely get together because it does come out from the Department of Economic Development, and make sure that it is remediated and addressed. So that's my commitment at this point. So I will dig into this and find out. I understand when it launched that there was some. I will address and circle back with the council shortly and get a path forward to remediation.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate that. And then I've got one question on the PEG Access Fund, and then I'm going to the top of the order, which I think is, I think of who's here, it is Councilor O'Malley. But I just wanted to know, 4.4 million is what we're appropriating here. I think that's pretty consistent with what it's been in years past. So to Dan's point, it's not increasing. So I sort of wanted to ask the question of why we've kept it flat, how that ends up being the number each year, and whether there's any room to adjust it.
Yes. Thanks, Madam Chair. The direct source of funding is really PEG support fees that come from subscribers to cable TV. I think we may have mentioned it in this hearing before, but the trend of people who are subscribing to cable TV is going down. We have balanced that out for the last few years with new payments from Verizon, who, as a new entry, kind of matches commitments previously made by Comcast. So we'll be getting extra money, if you will, from Verizon. And in addition, we foresee that maybe happening next year. So there's been a little bit of an offset, and there's probably been more money, it may be in next year, more money coming in than will be expended. We're not quite sure yet because we really don't know the pace of disconnects from cable TV. That really is what drives it. We have been fortunate since this fund started, I think 4 years ago. Prior to that, we made more direct payments through the Boston Charitable Trust. But since this fund started 4 years ago, we have had these one-time contribution opportunities that have kept the amount matching what has been spent in years prior, but I don't know how sustainable that is going forward.
Right, got it. Okay. Yeah, and obviously there's important work that sometimes we end up supporting out of the general fund, right? Because if the source just isn't there, but that's great to understand. And now Council President O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I stayed on because I wanted to follow up on this very line of questioning. I was not totally joking when I said DoIT's total budget should increase dramatically by as much as 50%. I know that's not realistic, but when we think about what we're asking all of you to do, not only as it relates to building out a more sustainable network, not only as it relates to addressing the digital divide, but just how we are all so much more dependent on technology, there is an argument to be made that we need to fund this a hell of a lot better. So that's my question, Mike, as it relates to cable TV subscribers. And I am one who cut the cord this year, I must admit. But I will happily pay a surcharge to my my Verizon bill, which is my internet. So that's my question. What would we need to do to sort of change that with either Comcast, Verizon, RCN to allow for that funding stream to continue and grow? People are moving away from traditional cable television by and large. You're going to see that increase as streaming services, become more numerous than television networks. So is that state legislation that creates that? Is it city legislation? Can you walk me through that and also walk me through how we can change that going forward to make sure that BNN, that Tech Goes Home, that all these other incredibly vital services remain fully funded?
Thanks, Councilor O'Malley. Thanks for the invite. Now that I think about it, all of this is guided by the 1996 Telecom Act.
Yeah.
That's federal stuff, and it's federal, it's Congress, and I don't see it getting revisited. If it did get revisited, we would probably lose the stream of funding that we currently have. I think Eddie can attest to the fact that I'm like a revenue junkie, probably the only guy in City Hall who just is always chasing the dollar. The future is uncertain. Cable TV was and is regulated. Broadband, what everybody accepts now, is not regulated. There is no fee attached to it. So there is not a revenue stream to compensate for it. Some of it is a situation of let's leave well enough alone at the federal level. I fear that if we change it, and there have been some attempts, there was an attempt by the cable industry just last year. FCC issued something called the 621 order. It will reduce some of our funding. We watch this vigilantly to sort of protect ourselves from it. We change our license with the cable operators in order to make sure some of our money is protected. I'm not really fully certain what the future brings. Yeah. I can say that for the next couple of years, I think we're okay. 5 years out, I don't have any idea. It's a fluid situation. I don't see federal law changing. I don't see compensation for use of the public right-of-way, but by broadband providers or cable providers or wireless providers changing for the benefit of local government anytime in the next few years.
Well, that's good. That's good intel. And again, your institutional knowledge in this space is unrivaled and so important, Mike.
Well, by the time it's leaving, I'll be retiring because I don't know what the answer is down there.
Mike Lynch can't retire. Come on.
Exactly. Is there a way that we could? And I guess I'm spitballing here, but I'm really curious because I think that this is a crucial issue that we really should be focused on as it relates to some of the infrastructure, the poles, is there any mechanism for the city to, and again, I don't want to suggest that we should, go after the providers that would then pass the cost on to the customers. We want to make sure it's affordable. One of the reasons why I cut cable because it was no longer affordable. Is there a way, though, that we could have a more dedicated, more reliable revenue stream using city tools? So I don't know, it wouldn't be excise taxes necessarily, but some way to go after some of the telecommunication giants?
Councilor, I honestly don't know. There was a council hearing on that about 20 years ago, and I got my head handed to me. So I'm not going back.
Well, I tell you what, I will pass this along. We will, you and I will have to go to Harry soon, and anyone else that wants to join can, and we can figure this out because I think there's a real opportunity here. And I remember I actually had a constituent reach out to me around this time last year saying, why the heck am I still being charged the fee from my cable provider for for sports when there have been no sports over the
No
last.
live sports. Yeah.
And we were able to work with some of the providers to get refunds. So I just want to make sure that as we talk about the important programming that this city is working with great partners like Ted Goes Home, like BNN, like the men and women of DoIT, we want to make sure that we don't leave money on the table. And we also want to make sure that these giant corporations that are making billions of dollars, not in Boston, but millions of dollars certainly of Boston customers are paying their fair share to make sure that we can continue this programming. So we will follow up on that, but thank you again all for your great work.
Councilor
Can I
O'Malley.
make a quick comment? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Glenn. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I just wanted to say that something that, and I've talked to Mike about this, is that the funding we get from the city of Boston not only supports our programs, but it is a catalyst for more funding. So, for example, if you went back 4 or 5 years ago with the city's $1 million funding, that basically was almost 100% of our budget. Well, today, even though the funding has remained the same, it's about 25% of our budget. So our budget in 4 years has grown from about $1 million to $4 million. And a lot of that not only is because of the incredible work of the city and the people who work for Ted Goes Home and beyond, but corporations and foundations, when they see cities investing and municipalities investing in projects, they love it. Corporations especially love it. So the bigger that pot gets to be, it opens different pockets of money for organizations like ours. So if the city were to come in and say, all right, we're giving you $5 million this year, or whatever that money might be, that means I can go to a much bigger corporation or a much bigger foundation and say, hey, the city of Boston's putting this in, can't you match that? So it's not just about serving more people, it's also about leveraging that support for more support in the private sector.
That's well said. Thank you, Dan.
If I can just for 1 second, just share with you that when I took over 2 years ago, a lot of the equipment and a lot of the work that a lot of the material we were working with was old NASA stuff, antiquated and old, and you know what I mean by NASA, all of these screens and stuff like that. And in order to keep our membership and attract more membership, we've had to upgrade a lot of our stuff. And technology flies, as Dan knows. And to be competitive with everybody else around, we've had to make some tough decisions and upgrade some things. With obviously, if there was more available funding from some other source or something else, some other kind of grant to fill out, let me know. I mean, I'm more than happy to sign on for that. And the other thing that we have down here is we have years and years of stuff that was on tape that needs to be archived, and critical stuff of Mayor Kevin White. Now, does anyone here work with him before? Literally stuff of his that is from our news that are sitting in tapes downstairs that need to be archived. So we've been working with UMass Boston and WGBH to do that, but that's a huge grant to get that done that we can't spend because we have to. I just wanted to put that fact out there, that we're a digital media center who needs to have some, push in the new direction. That's all. I didn't mean to take so much time.
No, I think you're right. In BNN, you do so much with so little. Upgrades are crucial, but we can't upgrade Joe Heisler. He's got to he's the top of the line.
Joe's working from home.
Of course he is. I love it. That's all I have, Madam Chair, but I think Mike has his hand
Yeah,
up.
I think Mike had a word he wanted to add as well.
I apologize. I just wanted to jump off of what Jan Noyes was saying. That's why I stress so much on the emergency broadband benefit. If we can get citizens, our residents who are in need to hook into these services and get this, that's an expense we will no longer be absorbing as we quickly did during the pandemic. The next fund coming down the line is the Emergency Connectivity Fund. Big fund, but the city's strategy since we began to build the city network 15 years ago was to become E-rate eligible. We as a city department provide services to schools and libraries and then get reimbursed with USAC, federal E-rate reimbursement dollars. That saves us a tremendous amount of money and it reduces our costs tremendously. Apparently under ECF, we can expand on that. We are trying to explore that right now. We're not exactly sure what we're eligible for, because I think, Councilor O'Malley, as you well know, local government is not the last party in the room when these laws are made. So there were a lot of not loopholes, but opportunities were closed to cities and towns. I don't know a better way to say it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. And if I can just follow up on that, Mike, so when you say expand the E-rate, like, is there a world in which we could provide that to our residential? I used to work at BHA, so I am always thinking about, and BHA always has to negotiate these deals with Verizon and Comcast, and they're a huge headache. And so, like, and I know they've been a big focus of our pandemic efforts. So I'm curious, like, you know, is there a possibility of crossing that Rubicon?
Only, I think, Counselor, only to the extent that we can be creative about the fact that BHA residents are students in our schools or members of our library system. In other words, the hook has to be through the libraries or through the schools. It's not through the BHA. On the other hand, I think the counselor supported all along our effort. We're using Crown Fiber to continue to expand our network. We're coming to the completion of that big phase of this project. And the council, eyes open, was aware that we were connecting all of the Boston Housing Authority developments. And that was a huge benefit, I think, that the city gave to the Housing Authority. Now the idea is how best to use it.
Okay, great. I want to let Councilor Julia Mejia go. She's next. So Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. It's great to see Tech Goes Home. We, you know, as you all know, we're a big supporter of your work. And have worked in collaboration in a number of different capacities throughout COVID. So I'm just curious, where do you, this question is for Tech Goes Home, where do you see yourselves in the next 5 years? And what role can the city play in helping to support that vision?
I have so many thoughts. I know, Marvin, do you want to?
No, go ahead, Dan. I'll come back on you.
Well, I think all it took for people to pay attention to digital equity was a pandemic, right? So let's hope we don't have any more of those. But the other thing is, I think, acknowledging that digital equity is a racial justice issue. So when you really dive into the data of who's not connected, it is the groups that we talk about. You know, a white senior, 23% of white seniors can't connect to telemedicine, while 60% of Black seniors and 71% of Latinx seniors cannot connect to telemedicine. A Black student is twice as likely not to have internet at home than a white student. A Black worker is twice as likely not to have basic digital literacy skills than a white worker. So you're looking across health and jobs and education. So in terms of where we're going, I hope there's more recognition that this isn't like a tech issue. This is an equity issue. That's what we're talking about here. Also, I think in terms of where we're going, the idea that what we do just as Tech Goes Home can touch so many aspects of people's lives. You know, our school-based family program, for example, gets parents into schools, and every study on the planet shows that a kid's grades will improve if a parent's involved in their child's education. So my hope would be that there'd be continued investment from municipalities, that the state would finally get involved in this, the Commonwealth would jump in, and Mike mentioned these funds from the federal government. I think you used the word you're afraid of them, Mike. I'm not afraid of them.
I'm not afraid of them.
They can come, they can all come to me. I'll spend it all tomorrow. But really look at this as a long-term strategy to ensure that all residents of the city of Boston have equal opportunity to the jobs, to the healthcare, to the education that they all deserve. From our perspective, we're really proud of the work we do, but it is a drop in the bucket compared to the problem. There's 140 or so thousand people in Boston that live in poverty. Marvin mentioned earlier, we're serving 5,500, 6,000 people this year, and we're proud of that, but we need to get to the point where we're serving 50,000 people. So that way we can really see real change, not only in Boston, but across the country. So I don't know, Marvin, if you have anything you want to add to that. That's me rambling. Sorry, Councilor.
No, I think Dan's statistics are satisfactory and give us a real clear picture of why this work is necessary. I think what we're looking for in municipal partners are to stretch us and create opportunities for us to identify other funding sources so that we can expand this work. As Dan mentioned, we're looking at, exceeding the 6,000 learner marker, but why can't we jump and leap beyond that? There's a huge demand out there for students and families that are looking for support, that with your support as legislators, we can actually make some real change and not just be the talk of the town, but actually be action oriented. So I'm looking to advance that sort of work with your support and hoping that we can just, formulate a partnership and we can do the Band-Aids around making sure that people have access, but we also need to address the fact that bandwidth is important as well. And so if it's not one thing for just a family to have internet capabilities, but it's another thing for them to have the bandwidth so that everyone in a household is able to execute their work and their responsibilities simultaneously, and no one's left behind. So thank you.
And on that point, if I could add, so we give the hotspots out to, like, we've worked in partnership with Mike for many years. The average data usage on our hotspots that we give out is 300 gigabytes per month. So T-Mobile has like a student plan that they provide for people. Their limit is 100 gigabytes a year. So to Marvin's point, we need to really start thinking about this 25, 30, 50 megs down. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, thank you for that. And to that point, I'm just curious, and I'm not sure, David might be able to kind of give us some insight. I think about these free Wi-Fi hotspots. They're usually in touristy areas. And I know that we've been talking a lot about how do we expand it. Look, right now my internet is unstable. I hope that you can still hear me. But I'm just really curious about what the city is doing to be more equitable in terms of sharing the reach around our Wi-Fi, and also what are we doing as a city, or what can we be doing to hold these providers more accountable, to be more fair and just in terms of their pricing, in terms of their bandwidth, and in terms of their offering in low-income communities. I mean, I think that it's great that we're opening up our doors and creating space for them to do business here in the city of Boston, but at some point we need to also set some standards in what it looks like to do business here equitably, and the role that they play in doing their fair share to ensuring that everyone has access to high-speed broadband access. And what does that accountability look like, and what can we do to be a little bit more aggressive around that?
Thank you, Councilman Mejia. Mike, you want to talk about our Wicked expansion and then talk about kind of the competition with the providers and the strategy around kind of broadband connectivity in the city of Boston?
Sure. Counselor, I'm guessing what you're talking about is what we know as Wicked Free Wi-Fi, but there are probably 4 different platforms of free wireless service provided by the city in Boston. And as a general rule of thumb, they are connected or close to city buildings. Wherever there is a city building, we've got Wi-Fi and we're looking to grow it. That's what the additional money, I believe, in the budget this year is helping to contribute to. The fact that we are finishing a major phase of the fiber deployment for our city network assists us greatly there. It means that we have approximately 330 city buildings connected where we can project ourselves out wirelessly from those buildings. But it's kind of close to those buildings. And that's what we're restricted by right now. I think Wicked Free Wi-Fi is maybe 300 access points across the city, and they're spread out across the city. It's mostly community centers and schools and fire departments and police stations that are in neighborhood business districts. That's kind of where we have been putting it right now. The libraries have put out another 300 units on their own. The schools, and most of the schools currently are inside. I think the schools have 6,000 access points. That law I mentioned to you, the new funding law, the Emergency Connectivity Fund, there is an opportunity within that for us to expand and for the libraries and the schools to put wireless outside their campuses and make it sort of a neighborhood hotspot. That is sort of what we're looking for. I don't want to overpromise. I mean, the industry spends a lot of time looking at what we can do and trying to prevent us from doing it. But that's where we are.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And before I get the gavel, I just wanted to also make note that we have a lot of higher ed institutions here who are occupying a lot of space in the city of Boston. And I think that there is an opportunity to also invite them to be better partners in this journey alongside. And I don't know if we're already doing that, but if we are, great, we need to do more of it. And if we're not, then we need to also consider that as a community benefit, because everyone should be benefiting from access to Wi-Fi. And I think that our higher ed institutions could be a better partner in that space as well.
I think it's a wonderful idea, Counselor. It takes what they call one more SSID card inside every access point to open it up to the community which they serve, which they live in.
We'll let the higher education institutions know that I'm coming for them on that one.
Very good.
It's on record. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Great, thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. I have a few more questions on my part, and I did just want to also put back on record, there were two questions that I cut off from Councilors Campbell and Braden, and they had to go, but I wanted to get your answers on the record. So one was Councilor Campbell's third question that we didn't get to was about, she was talking about the hearing that we had about the police department's data and the need to analyze it, and the fact that we just had this hearing where YE is hiring a new person to kind of figure out lessons learned and how to build a workforce development pipeline, using more of their data. And so I think her question was sort of how is DoIT thinking about its role supporting departments in sort of data analysis in this world of big data and trying to turn around and be recursive about what we're doing, and what are the barriers to kind of supporting city departments on that front.
So on the data front, it's and especially through the last 15 plus months that we've went through COVID, talking about infection rates and hotspots in the city, and now many other things that we're using our data for to drive our decisions, support our decisions. The way that we are looking at it right now is that right now it's a collaborative approach. The city and all its various departments do share quite a bit of information with our data and analytics team, but there's always an opportunity to expand on that and really kind of look holistically. Anything around kind of big data analysis or big data, doing big data pipelining work, the more you kind of put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So this is I'm in multiple conversations across the city around to open really kind of a lot of that up to our chief data officer and our analytics team to help support and look at, kind of the city holistically as we kind of come out of this pandemic. And that's really kind of where I see the vision of data in the city going, as opposed to kind of more of a decentralized model, and everyone kind of has their own pocket of data and analysis that they're doing. That the real opportunity really comes from really centralizing a lot of those data opportunities to really kind of drive insights and get guidance, as we move forward out of the pandemic as one city and not a culmination of departments.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think having a real strategy around that seems great. It's always this question between how you centralize it like that and then still have the insight about the operations on the ground to be able to have useful takeaways, right? Get to the right people.
And that's the goal, is to get really that real-time useful intel to the boots on the ground that are actually making the difference. And and it's that old adage around data is using yesterday's data to drive tomorrow's insights, and really making sure that you are turning that around quickly, so that the thing about data is it's an ever-changing thing. So So you need to be moving, and that's why your focus is either real time or near real time, getting those insights to immediately react to something. As we were seeing when we, back when the pandemic started, and we stood up our coordinated leadership forum in the city, where we were collaborating in real time, sharing data as kind of a city, working across city departments. And I would like to see, and where I'm focused on, and this kind of touched on a bunch of questions that came up today, is that is one of the goals of coming out of this pandemic. Some of the good stuff that we were dealing with through the last 15 months that really will pay dividends kind of coming out of COVID-19. That as we look at data as a city and share information and data in real time to help support the decisions and help be a data-driven city.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is, now we're past Councilor Campbell's question and my comment. But it's like, I think that real-time data is really important, but also the more of a longitudinal sense we can get of what's going on. Because one of the things I'll just say, I'm frustrated by in our city budget book is we've sort of gotten religion on the idea of we should have metrics and goals or whatever, but that they're totally divorced from context. And what I mean by that is they tell me oh, we had this many interactions this year with teenagers, of these ages, and then this many the year before and this many the year before. But they don't tell me how many teenagers that age are in the city of Boston and whether we threw more money or less money at achieving a static state, right? I think we have to get beyond the sort of lip service numbers, oh, look, it's data, right? to kind of the how we paint those pictures that are really that really give policymakers both at our level and in the departments, right, kind of actionable intelligence.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I couldn't agree more. And when you look at that, that's just really kind of on the performance management side, as we are looking to continually improve as government operations. That to your point, I've spoken to 1,000 youth, kind of in this space. But what is the context? Is that out of 3,000? Well, that's great. That's 1/3. Is it out of 50,000? Well, that's not so good. So really kind of understanding and really kind of, wrapping around and getting a full, complete picture of how we're actually doing to really focus on the performance management of that area or that initiative. So is it something that we need to double down on? Is it something that we should scrap? Is it something that we should, kind of, tweak a little bit? Because obviously we're not touching as many people, as we would like to get kind of the insights that we're looking for. But yeah, I completely understand kind of, totally makes sense. And it's spot on to my thinking as well.
And then the third question that I cut Councilor Braden off on was, and I think Mike Lynch, you were about to answer it, was sort of about what the plan is to expand internet access in our libraries, from our libraries. I think, just in general, Councilor Braden thinking about just the way in which the libraries are this important location for digital access for students, for seniors, for our unhoused population. I definitely see that all the time. I've got both the Central Library and the West End Branch Library in my district, which are used heavily by all those populations. So yeah, if you could speak a bit to that, that'd be great.
Sure, Madam Chair. I don't presume to speak for the libraries, but as you know, David Leonard had run operations at the library before he was president, and IT was a big part of his life. So he's very much focused on it. I know that their strategic plan that they put out in March or April included looking outward, looking outside of their building for opportunities. I know that the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which we touched on earlier, will allow for funding beyond their footprint for the first time. And again, that is actually reimbursable under the E-rate program. So these are potentials. I can't speak for them. I don't know what the plan is. We are in touch with them. I think we're meeting next week actually, but I think the opportunity does exist for them to do more wireless outside the four walls of the library to reach. I think also, that during the pandemic, they expanded their hotspot program I think they can look to expand that vastly at very little cost to themselves. This is a new program. The rules aren't out yet on how the money can get spent by the by Treasury, I think. I forget who's driving which fund. When those rules come out, we'll have a better answer. The concern, again, is that the industry somehow stop us from being involved.
And that's from the connectivity fund.
Yes.
Okay, so the
So the connectivity is FCC and NTIA, yes.
Yeah, and so just so I'm clear, there's the emergency broadband benefit, and that's something that's for specific individuals in the city of Boston, right?
Correct.
To access, and if they got it, that would relieve us as the city from providing this support the financial support we've been providing. Is
That's
that
correct, yes.
Got it. But that people need to apply for individually. We can't apply on their behalf, but are we doing anything in terms of clinics or anything? And I don't know if this is also a tech goes home question, but like how much are we?
Yeah, I think it may also be, I mean, Dan knows this as well as I do. I think we're realizing we communicated with all of the agencies, but literally, I think in some cases, it is such a complicated pathway. I think there has to be an awful lot of handholding on this, literally one-to-one attention.
Right.
I think Dan agrees with me on that. That's the problem with the program.
It's the problem with all the programs, not just ETV. No, I'm being blunt about it. Our success rate to get people to sign up for Internet Essentials, which is Comcast's plan, is horrid. It's about 20%, and we pay for it. But even there, with all the handholding goes on, there's lots of factors. There's people who are afraid of the ISPs. There's people who are afraid of the government. There are people who don't understand it. Councilor Mejia brought up the point of language and culturally appropriate materials. It's just the ISPs, they're not looking to add necessarily a whole lot of new people at low income plans. And one of the big issues with the EBB right now is it's temporary. So if you ask anyone, oh, how long is it going to pay for my internet? No one knows. So I don't know about you, but would I sign up for that? And the last thing I'll mention, not to berate Verizon, but I'm going to do it. They're upselling. Like there was New York Times and Washington Post stories about if you want to sign up for the emergency broadband benefit to get a Verizon plan, you have to switch to a different plan that when EBB money runs out is going to cost you more money. So there's just a lot of stuff that, to Mike's point, everything about it is complicated, and you're working with communities that are new to this, so it's just bound to fail. And that, I don't mean to sound like such a downer, but it's such an opportunity that I feel like was wasted by the FCC. But
well, so, but I guess the relevant question for us, and obviously that's enormously frustrating. The relevant question for us is there enough of a benefit to the program for us to throw, like, if we were to throw like a bunch of people at like, sitting in the libraries and working with folks one-on-one on getting them signed up, like the question is like, is the cost benefit there worth it? How much would it be per month for folks? Like what's the value?
$50 a month plus $100 for whatever device you're going to use to get on, a Chromebook or whatever. And Councilor, to answer your question, yes, this funding, which we are discussing here today, Dan is going to spend some of this money figuring out videos to convey to people how to walk through this, or remote trainings to do the same. He's already working on that. Glenn over at BNN is going to do the same thing to train up people in different social service agencies if they need a video clip to communicate with people. We're not fully out of COVID yet, so nobody's doing like, come to our workshop and I'll sit next to me and walk us through the application process. I think some of it has to be a little bit still remote. And it's hard for an agency if you know from years in government, Madam Chair, that it's hard for an agency whose job is one thing, addressing issues of seniors, to all of a sudden change and become an expert in filling out a federal form that's 14 pages long. That's kind of, so it's literally, it's going to be a little bit of like training the trainer to make it happen. There is money, actually the Fed's made some money available for it, but nobody knows how to do it yet. We're only about a week or two into the program.
I would say, Councilor Bach, it's not about getting people to sign up for the EBB. It's about getting them to sign up for the low income plans that the carriers provide. So it's getting people to sign up for Internet Essentials with Comcast, and then they can have the benefit of the EBB, because Comcast will help them take care of that. or Verizon has a $35 a month plan if you live in the city where Verizon, or they call it a $20 a month plan. It's not, it's 35, but it's 200 megabytes down. It's a really good speed. But again, you want to go to Verizon first or Comcast first and then do the EBB. The problem is there's a large chunk of the population in our city that they don't want to go to a carrier for lots of different reasons. And that is a hurdle that we're working on, especially with immigrant populations and populations that don't speak English. And it's hard, it's really hard.
Yeah, anything we can, I do feel, I take your point, Mike, about how it's hard for people to sort of learn another thing. I think the reality in the pandemic is that we have frequently asked our city departments, our social service agencies, our nonprofit partners to become expert at various ridiculous things, right? I mean, like obviously we literally sent a bunch of City of Boston employees to help the state clear their unemployment backlog at one point. But we also, Age Strong has been signing people up for vaccines. They've, been helping people fill out paper. Like there has been a bit of that in the pandemic, right? More than a bit. And I think at this point, practically everybody who works for the city knows how to sign up for a vaccine on like 3 different websites. But I guess, it feels to me, or like I think about our libraries and how much the fact that at Copley we added, a whole capacity to help people with housing search and such because of the fact that was part of what the librarians were doing. It's just, it feels like it's very frustrating the way it's been set up. It feels like if there's this one-time incentive though, that helps us get over what's already a very hard hurdle, like we've got to figure out how to do it. But it also brings me back to my question, and I promise we're nearing the end of this hearing, but my question that got punted, which is, it's just like, it's not a very compelling patchwork. I just feel like our private broadband providers, like to the point that Dan has about how much internet people will use when you actually give them the speeds and capacity that they need. I just feel like we're in this weird lull where it's like, we've got some competition, but not so much that they're really competing dramatically on price. And then it's like they're giving people kind of like terrible download speeds, but they're not financially incentivized enough to level us up to the next level of service. And so we're just like sitting in this doldrums where, and meanwhile, South Korea's got everybody with real internet. And I guess I don't see, I'm not allergic to places where a private profit motive is actually going to drive the provision of a stellar and expensive infrastructure. It just seems like we're trapped in this space where they're not adequately incentivized to provide the stellar infrastructure. And there's no way they will be, because in order to do it on a purely private basis, they would have to charge everybody an arm and a leg, which is in the opposite direction of us saying that we want this to be a utility that everyone has access to, like water. So it's very hard for me to see how we're going to get where we need to get for the 21st century Bostonian on the path that we're on.
Councilor,
I feel like Mike Lynch has lots to say.
I'm as frustrated as you. Look, the simple way is the 1996 Act. This is 25 years of failed federal policy. The concept was, let's make these guys, there's so much energy, let's make them compete with each other. Competing, they'll fight to reach every corner of every community, and they'll provide an affordable pricing for, initially it was cable TV, but later it's broadband. We kind of know that didn't really work, but we don't know how to turn the clock back on 25 years of federal policy. It's impossible. Right now, the city has engaged with other cities in lawsuits to fight for these fees, which we're protecting, to fight for our public assets in the right of way, which wireless companies want to use unfettered. It's a crazy world. I'm not really sure what the future is. I do know that in Boston, if we talked about municipal broadband, if somebody had $2 billion and said, go for it, it'd be fabulous. We could really build something sweet. It would take a long time. It would take years, 5 to 10 years. But I'm not sure that we have $2 billion or can figure out how to capitalize for $2 billion. On the other hand, the pandemic has taken the city of Boston and other cities and counties and forced them to take care of their citizens by literally paying for their connectivity, something we had never done in the past. I mean, a year and a half ago when it started, we were sitting there saying, who'd have thunk that the city would be paying for people to have internet access at home? But that is exactly where we are a year and a half later. It has become our problem. And the solutions offered under these funding streams, I'm just saying they're a little questionable for us. So.
Yeah.
Counselor, you said earlier you used the railroads as I thought a really good analogy. Right. If we thought of internet as water or electricity, and if we said that, you know, people who have household incomes of under 30,000, about 40% of them don't have internet at home. That's right. So if you said for a moment that 40% of the low-income households in our city didn't have electricity or didn't have running water, it would be a national catastrophe. But up until the pandemic, people really weren't paying a lot of attention to the digital divide issues. And I hope, and I was really happy that Councilman Lee asked the question. I hope that we start moving towards this idea that internet is as important as water and electricity. But that's right. I mean, we're just not there yet.
Because we can state that it is a utility, but it is not. It was not structured as a utility. And right now, it is actually void of any oversight. Nobody is pushing the industry in a particular direction. We in Boston are a little bit lucky. Comcast and Verizon, you can hate them, but they have contributed to the city of Boston. And during the pandemic, they were very, very responsive in the city of Boston. We work well with them, but you have to ask yourself a question. What is the crazy world we are in, where we are trying to get an industry, a for-profit industry, to solve our problems of digital equity? It's nuts.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking. I think I'm going to get in trouble at some point.
No, I mean, so, and how much have we spent on paying for Bostonians' connectivity over the pandemic?
I'd say we'd spent, Eddie will probably wince when I say this, I think it's somewhere around $3 to $4 million, depending on what you throw in. That doesn't include the Chromebooks that went to students.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess Dan, I sort of think we're maybe at that moment where we have to be like, the internet is a utility and how are we going to change our practice? And like, you know, people thought there was a time in American cities 100 years ago where like access to a sewer or septic system was a nice thing that rich people had, like, you know, and everybody else like threw their sewage in the street, like literally, right? So I just think we have moved our goalposts before on what counts as like a thing that everyone's got to have. And it just feels like that's what the pandemic, because that's what we've seen, right? I mean, these, like everything that we have done civically in the last year has been reliant on the internet.
Counselor, we have a wait list of over 100 organizations that want to work with us that has developed during the pandemic because homeless shelters and senior housing and employment organizations. And we have partnerships now with MGH and with Brigham and Women's, like for telehealth. The issue we have, and I'm going to have David and Mike cover their ears, is it's funding. It's just that we don't have, even though our budget has grown so much, the demand has grown. So I think I totally agree with you. I think now is the time. If it's not now, then when?
Well, exactly. If it's not now, when are we going to do this?
But I think Mike, and I want to really give a high five to Mike and David and the team. I think Boston is very lucky relative to other cities. Also, so much more proactive. I mean, they give Tech Goes Home $1 million a year via the PEG. I mean, I tell other city partners that, and they like their jaws drop. Maybe that's not the best way to ask for more money, as I shouldn't be saying that, but it's, I think Boston should be really, really proud. That said, we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah. and so you've got a wait list of 100 organizations. How many are you working with?
About 200. Our biggest issue is that all of our existing partners wanted to scale. So we, for a period of time, took on 0 new partners. So we've got 40 Boston public schools that we work with. I'm rounding here, but there might be 10 new ones that now said they want to work with us, but we're like, we can't, because I'm not going to take away from an existing partner. It just doesn't make sense for us in terms of capacity. And it's a hard thing. And we're doing a lot. We're having to tackle issues of equity where the Quincy Elementary School is a massive partner of ours. They're one of our biggest. Well, is it fair that the Quincy Elementary runs more Tech Goes Home for their families than, say, Family High School? So how do we, it's just the decisions my program team are having to make right now, it's tragic, because they're having to say no to people who are so worthy of these resources. But we're doing everything we can to figure it out.
Councilor, I don't want to appear negative. I don't think there is a magic answer to anything here. Boston is doing a bunch of smaller things targeted at distinct populations and constituencies. We found that through the Digital Equity Fund application. We got 100 good applications. These people were being creative about how to address the problem for their clients, our residents. We had programs like, I want to get their name right, I think it's Little Brothers, they're an elderly service program. We were buying hotspots for them, and this started 14 months ago, right? So every week I've been saying to them, guys, this is going to end at some point. You got to figure out what you're going to do here. Have people figure out how to buy their own, buy yours, and they're picking up the expense of that now. They've come around to it because those agencies realize they can't deliver their services without this connectivity. So they recognize and accept some of the responsibility that connectivity might be a burden on them, a cost of doing business. So things are still sort of shifting. I don't know that we have great answers. You worked at the BHA. The BHA put out an RFP for rooftop access. I think Starry responded to it. I think they're working with Starry. The idea is Starry beams the signal, hits the building, inside wiring, gets it into the communities. Or maybe they do wireless outside. They're not really sure. They're working on final aspects of that. But it's I think going forward, it's going to be 20 different solutions, not a magic bullet, if we still use that phrase.
Got it. But you think that municipal broadband for the city of Boston would cost $2 billion and take 5 to 10 years?
And I think that because San Francisco just executed a study, I guess it was just before the pandemic, and the price tag, San Francisco is similar to us, at least in terms of population and size and its approach to solutions, and in somewhat, its residency, if you will. Yeah, they pegged it at $2 billion.
And and then I guess it's just a question of, as Treasury comes down with these is it Treasury? You said you weren't sure, or did you confirm it was?
The big money, the ARPA money, there's money in there. The American Rescue Act money is being funneled through Treasury as direct funds. Yeah, that's the big bucket. We're exempted from spending that to build out broadband because we already have decent coverage in every census block of the city.
Got it. So we're not, so even though broadband's listed as one of the uses on that,
That's really targeted at rural communities. There was a great article in the New York, I'll send it. There was a great article in the New York Times on Monday that said, has anybody noticed that all this federal funding is targeted towards rural communities? I'm not begrudging small towns and rural communities, but I'm just looking through there saying, what can somebody like Boston do, and not seeing a lot of opportunity.
93% of people who are not connected in the state of Massachusetts, 93% live in urban areas. 93%. And yet the money is flowing in a lot of ways to, like Mike said, don't want to begrudge rural communities, but
we can't get into an urban versus rural.
Yeah, it's hard to get it in people's heads that land doesn't vote, unfortunately. Right. Something about the visual appeal of that to people. It's very frustrating sometimes. But okay, but I guess, but separately, the connectivity grant, emergency connect, what's the
Yes,
title?
The Emergency Connectivity Fund. It was that second, what do they call it, tranche of money, right?
And is that the $7 billion?
That's about $7 billion. So,
but nationally, right?
And that's national, right?
And And we think the regulations on that are being promulgated by whom?
We know that they're being promulgated by the FCC.
By the FCC. Yeah. And do you guys know if anybody, I realize this isn't really a DoIT question, it might be an IGR question, but do you guys know if anybody on the sort of like representing municipality side is lobbying?
So we belong to a group called the National Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors. So our group kind of specializes in this stuff. We worked with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities, and National Association of Counties. We lobbied, met with, and wrote comments and letters advocating for some loosening up of funding to local government. I could send you the reply draft order, if you will. But the gist of it is that the law, meaning Congress, wrote the bill in such a way that we cannot loosen up these rules. What we wanted to do is say, let us be the providers. Let us act as the broker between the providers and the need. And they took us out of the mix. Now, I don't know, nobody's gone to court over it yet, but the law was kind of written that way, so they weren't completely wrong. But the FCC is currently with a Democratic vacancy, so it is a 2-2 tie agency. So Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel just didn't have the heft, I think. I can't believe I'm saying all this stuff, but I don't think she was able to carry that in a different direction, So.
Don't worry, Mike. No one knows what YouTube is.
Nobody knows where to find this, right?
So I guess, okay, but that makes me think that we're not, because what you had said earlier suggested that there might be some hope for us depending on how those regs come out.
So within that big bucket of $7 billion, people who have E-rate communities, these are dollars that are going into E-rate. E-rate is usually just like PEG fees. PEG fees are a cable fee. E-rate is actually a telephone fee. The old telephone fee access charge funds E-rate. The $7 billion is new federal dollars being dumped into, a good portion of it being dumped into E-rate. We are, the city of Boston, we are an E-rate provider to our schools and to our libraries. If we can figure out a way to apply, and they'll be doing it within the next 2 weeks, we're just going to carve out and say, we might do this, we might do this. We might do, I don't know, learning centers in BHA family developments or something, something like that. And that might get covered by BPS. This is, this is guesswork at this point, but that's, yes, we are at that point of saying these are things we speculate on. And it is, I'm trying to be I'm managing expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say I would be all for anything we can do to expansively interpret library users, school families, and just think about, if the city of Boston can be on the cutting edge of kind of using that authority, so much the better, in my opinion. So,
well, we're in close touch with both schools and libraries. I'll leave you alone after this and say, hey, do me a favor, watch the last 10 minutes of this hearing.
Sounds good. It might be a little more than 10 minutes. I apologize for that. But I think with that, I'm done with my questions. And I think counselors have all had a chance to ask theirs. So I'll just give you, Chief, if you have any last words before I adjourn our session.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to not only, highlight the work that we've done in a very, difficult time for the city and for Bostonians, and, the work that we have done kind of really reaching and communicating, the situation, whether it's, turning back the clock a little bit, how hotspots were cropping up in the city of Boston, now coming to the point where we're trying to get people vaccinated. So it's been a very challenging 15 months. But, and I think we had kind of touched on this as well, is that there's always opportunity in a crisis, and the goal is now, how do we capitalize on this? And Madam Chair, you had kind of coined it out very, very succinctly. If not now, when? That this is our opportunity to have a bite at that apple, even though it may be a bit elusive. But if it's not now, when is it going to happen? This is the conversation that I'm having with CIOs across the country. That, and I think Dan Noy said it as well. I mean, is it going to take another pandemic? I mean, what did we learn by this one? So, the goal would be, coming out of this, really kind of identifying our populations and what is needed, And this is an opportunity for us to kind of step up. And I agree that, whether we categorize this as a utility or not, this is, undoubtedly what the city of Boston and, cities around the country need. We just need to kind of figure out how we're going to get there. And it always takes, it kind of takes one to kind of start forging the path, and then the other cities follow. And a lot of cities do look to the city of Boston. So, if I would love to, kind of work together collaboratively, and myself and Mike and Dan and the rest of the gang, and figure out how we can do this. Because like you said, if not now, when?
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you. And thank you again to Glenn and to Dan and Marvin for joining us, and all the work that you do as our partners through the PEG Access Fund. With that, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, everybody.